At the start of a murder trial, the plaintiff, Cassia Victor, stands with a dark-haired man, her gaze firm and resolute. A blonde-haired man in a white uniform panics, insisting he's been framed, and pleads with Cassia to speak for him. With a loud bang of the gavel, the judge orders silence, announcing that the defendant, Douglas Fawcett, will be stripped of his title. As the judge declares that all his assets and power now belong to the state, Douglas watches in horror. He falls into deep shock, his world crumbling, as he whispers that it must all be a lie. He erupts in fury, screaming at Cassia, demanding to know how far she intends to humiliate him. He changes his tone, smiling smugly, and tells her to consider her husband's dignity. Cassia turns to face him, her expression cold and unmoved. Douglas mistakes her attention for a sign of weakness and laughs in relief, thinking he has won her back. Cassia stares at him, her voice sharp and piercing, as she asks who he is calling husband. Douglas is struck speechless and can only stammer in confusion. She asserts her power, declaring she is now a member of the royal family and can have him executed for treason. Faced with her threat, Douglas's face is etched with pure terror. She walks out of the courthouse with two companions, a voice declaring with relief that it's finally over. Cassia gazes out at the city, a sense of calm, finality washing over her. She closes her eyes, feeling a great weight lift from her chest. She recalls her painful past, abandoned by Douglas after just 3 years of marriage. A flashback shows her crying, covered in bruises, remembering. It all happened just 4 years after she joined his family. A close-up shows a younger her, blushing and smitten, captivated by him. She remembers him as a perfect man, with golden hair and deep blue eyes. In a sunlit garden, he gently takes her hand, and they become engaged. Back then, she lived in a blissful dream, where just being near him made her heart race with excitement. She recalls Douglas always being with other women, but admits she didn't find his behavior problematic at the time. She rationalized that for her shy self, the other women served as useful shields. During their engagement celebration, they received countless gifts and letters. Nearby nobles gossiped about the new couple. She remembers how many noble ladies cried over Douglas's marriage. She felt on top of the world, becoming the bride of the empire's most sought-after man. On their wedding day, she beamed with happiness. But her happiness was fleeting. Having never received his love, she broke down in agony. She soon learned Douglas's true nature as a philanderer obsessed with appearances, indulging in alcohol and gambling. After her family's downfall left her with nowhere to go, she was forced to work tirelessly to pay for his uncontrollable spending. He grew colder, eventually even bringing his mistress into their home, while Cassia could only watch from the shadows. One day, he declared her useless, demanded a divorce, and forced her to drink something when she refused to sign. Then, he cruelly abandoned her, unconscious, in a slum alley. She awoke shivering in the cold, alone in a dark, snowy alley. She saw a notice fluttering in the wind. She reflected on the cursed laws that favored men, but now realized she was lucky to be alive. With newfound determination, she saved every penny she earned from her hard labor. Using her innate sense for money, her investments grew into a massive fortune. Now, a confident and wealthy Cassia stands proudly before her magnificent estate. She admits that hearing news of Douglas's downfall became one of her small pleasures. She smiled and feigned sympathy upon learning his ship had sunk. She listened with delight as her butler reported that Douglas had been swindled out of his money and abandoned by his friends. She watched the storm outside her window, savoring the moment of pure bliss. She greatly enjoyed witnessing his ruin and the chain reaction it caused. A terrified maid interrupts her thoughts, announcing a visitor. Outside in the pouring rain stands a drenched and distraught Douglas, crying out. Tears stream down his face as he clutches his chest, calling her name. Her eyes widen in surprise, her body frozen in place. In the downpour, a distraught, tear-streaked Douglas questions her presence. She recalls how the fallen Duke Douglas knelt before her mansion, begging for forgiveness. He tearfully confessed his sins, and she decided to give him one last chance. She remembers him protecting her, rushing to her side whenever she was in danger. His once cold gaze was gone, replaced by a gentle one as he softly asked what was wrong with her. The memory of his warm, reassuring smile feels like a distant, beautiful dream. Back at her desk, Cassia works diligently, reflecting on how well her business is doing. Her calm focus shatters as she reads a letter, shocked by its contents. She clutches her head in frustration, wondering if this could be Douglas's doing behind the scenes. A purple-haired man confirms the document's legitimacy, stating that it's unlikely to be a mistake. Cassia despairs, realizing what a fool she was to have believed Douglas's apology. Vowing never to forgive him, she storms into the room to confront him about the document. As Douglas calmly asks what's wrong, a frantic Cassia accuses him of stealing her assets. She furiously reminds him that she only gave him a chance, not full forgiveness. His cruel words echo in her mind, mocking her for being stingy with her luck and money. Douglas arrogantly claims that as the Duke, all her wealth rightfully belongs to him. A smiling woman with long, light brown hair appears in the doorway. A hand crumples a piece of paper as a voice calmly orders them to get out. Her anger erupts as she screams at Douglas and his companion to leave at once. She declares she will never forgive him, glaring at Douglas as he calls her name. Douglas coldly tells her not to embarrass herself in front of the woman named Laura. He dismisses her anger, pointing to the document as proof that he is now the owner. She stares at him, thinking he's as clueless as ever. She finally snaps, screaming that he's the one who doesn't understand anything. Cassia accuses him of forging the documents sent to her. He closes in on her, whispering that she should have stayed quiet and not opposed the head of the household. He continues his tirade, sneering that she has always lacked charm. He reveals that an accomplice named Adolf forged the documents, then asks if she knows what her biggest problem is. He tells a dejected Cassia with a cruel smirk that her problem is being too stupid. In her imagination, she furiously fights back, chasing Douglas and Laura with a giant mallet. A memory of her once hopeful smile flashes, a reminder of the last chance she gave him. Cassia gasps, her eyes flying open as she shouts his name. She groggily sees Douglas standing before her in different clothes, wondering why he's there. Her confusion deepens as she tries to recall when he changed his clothes. He greets a red-haired woman, addressing her as Catherine. Cassia's mind races, try to remember what happened to Laura, who was there just a moment ago. Staring at her own hands, she is surprised to find the scars from his abuse are gone. Douglas and the red-haired woman turn to her, and he calls her name again. She stares at her own flawless reflection in the mirror, completely bewildered. Suddenly, the reflection transforms into her bruised and tormented self, which grabs her with a chilling smile. Cassia hangs her head, disoriented by the surreal moment. She angrily wonders why she's being hit by Douglas again, recalling how he once beat her to death. Douglas apologizes to Catherine, dismissing Cassia's behavior as mere confusion. With a bruised face and a determined gaze, Cassia announces she wants a divorce immediately. She realizes with cold certainty that he's talking about divorce again. She looks him straight in the eye, challenging him on the divorce he always brings up, daring him to do it now. With new resolve, she steps forward, agreeing to divorce him right away. She turns, asking if he's tired of the topic, and pointing out that his mistress is already acting like the lady of the house. Douglas lets out a triumphant sneer, pleased with her response. Douglas embraces the red-haired Catherine, declaring he's found his destined partner and praising her wifely role. Cassia scoffs internally at the sleazy Douglas, knowing he repeats this routine with every woman. Unfazed, Cassia thinks it doesn't matter, as she has an ace up her sleeve. Douglas looks away, deciding that all that's left is the divorce. As he stands behind Catherine, he asks if that's really her, much to Catherine's surprise. Cassia fumes internally, thinking Catherine wants this divorce more than anyone and should act accordingly. Cassia lets out a frustrated sigh, seemingly baffled by the situation for a moment. Douglas looks at Catherine in shock, calling her name as she appears to be in pain. Cassia watches Douglas and Catherine from a distance with a look of surprise. Cassia covers her mouth, delighted to see her plan working even better than expected. As Catherine feigns distress, Cassia mentally praises her simple but effective acting and urges her to continue. Catherine commits to the performance, and Cassia thinks with satisfaction. That's right, just like that. With a confident smile, Cassia decides to play along with their little charade for now. Catherine turns to Douglas, complaining that she's been feeling nauseous and feverish lately. Douglas stares at her in shock, immediately suspecting a pregnancy. Catherine mentions her period is late, but Cassia interjects, telling Douglas to hurry up with the divorce so he can marry his mistress. She presses him, asking if he plans to have an illegitimate child, which angers Douglas for questioning his timing. Douglas erupts, yelling at Cassia to stop her nonsense. He angrily calls her selfish, worrying only about the supposedly pregnant Catherine, who has no family to support her. He declares that if it's his child, Cassia should raise it, and scolds her for even mentioning divorce. Cassia's anger boils over as she wonders what kind of pushover he takes her for. Douglas ignores Cassia, comforting Catherine and telling her to rest until the doctor arrives. He then orders Catherine to ask Cassia for anything she needs, further enraging Cassia. Sitting alone, Cassia calmly declares that she has made up her mind about the divorce. Her personal maid, Amy, and the head maid, Linda, are introduced, looking on with concern. Her lawyer and advisor, Royer, sits before her, asking if she is certain about her decision. Royer reluctantly informs Cassia that she currently has almost no assets to her name. He explains that since Douglas won't consent to the divorce, getting alimony or dividing assets will be difficult. Cassia asks about the property and real estate she brought into the marriage. Royer replies that they can only reclaim a nearly depleted diamond mine, which makes Cassia thoughtful. Cassia declares she won't hand over the mine, as it's a precious memento from her father. Her maid Amy gently advises her not to rush, saying Catherine's pregnancy isn't the real issue. Cassia looks at Amy firmly, stating that having a solid reason for divorce is what truly matters now. The two maids exchange a worried glance, unsure of what will happen next. After Cassia states her case, her lawyer Royer expresses his understanding and vows to do everything he can. Cassia clenches her fist, firmly stating her refusal to be under his control any longer. She thanks her lawyer and maids, acknowledging they're the only ones in the house on her side. Royer nervously offers a glimmer of hope, suggesting there might be another way. He explains that with the right strategy, she could receive alimony far exceeding her original dowry. He hands over a stack of papers, asking her to review the documents he's prepared. A sly, triumphant smile spreads across Cassia's face as she realizes her opportunity. Cassia strides down the hallway, excited that Douglas has finally summoned her, so she could be free of him for good. In his office, Douglas cruelly tells Cassia that Catherine achieved in a moment what she couldn't in 3 years. He tells her with a cold expression that all that's left is for them to divorce. When Cassia asks how he can be so heartless, Douglas proposes that she raise Catherine's child. He coldly outlines his plan for her to fake a pregnancy and register his illegitimate child as her own. Cassia is horrified, realizing he wants her to raise Catherine's child as a foundling. Her expression hardens as she challenges him, asking if Catherine actually agreed to this outrageous plan. Douglas falls silent, unable to meet her gaze. Cassia firmly instructs her head maid, Linda, to bring Catherine to the room, panicking Douglas. With a sharp gaze, Cassia begins to expose his outrageous hypocrisy. Cassia accuses Douglas of insulting both her and Catherine, implying a mistress was needed because she couldn't conceive. A tense silence fills the room as Cassia glares at the seated Douglas. The tension is palpable as Catherine suddenly appears, angrily demanding to know why her child should be given to Cassia. As tears well up in Catherine's eyes, a voiceover gently reassures her that it's okay. Cassia calmly takes control of the situation, reassuring Catherine and telling her not to worry about Douglas's plan. With a serene smile, Cassia congratulates Catherine on her pregnancy. Cassia presents her own proposal, a divorce so that Douglas and Catherine can marry and legitimize their child. Catherine looks up, shocked and hesitant at Cassia's unexpected suggestion, feigning distress. Catherine loudly worries about the shame her child would face as an illegitimate heir. She completes her performance, claiming her heart would break, while Douglas listens intently. Catherine decisively instructs the head maid, Linda, to summon her lawyer, Royer. Cassia watches the scene unfold with a cold, calculating gaze, her plan proceeding perfectly. A flashback reveals Catherine's frustration at remaining a mistress after 6 months in the ducal house. Despite Douglas's favor, a narrator explains that Catherine was ostracized by the servants due to her family's fallen status. The narration condemns the selfish Duke for ignoring Catherine's position and now planning for an illegitimate child. Royer, a man with light brown hair and glasses, arrives in the study, asking if he was summoned. Cassia calmly asks her lawyer to bring out the divorce papers she had him prepare earlier. Royer presents the document, explaining that the divorce will be by mutual consent if both parties sign. Douglas scoffs that since Cassia initiated the divorce, he has no obligation to pay her alimony. Cassia internally counters that she is entitled to alimony since the fault is not hers. She then turns to Royer, asking for confirmation that her dowry will also be returned. Her lawyer confirms that in a no-fault divorce, there will be no problem reclaiming her assets. Douglas reluctantly agrees to return the diamond mine she brought as her dowry. Royer explains the mine is now worthless, but mentions the family's wealth doubling, which Douglas angrily questions was her contribution. Douglas dismisses her role, attributing the estate's success solely to the family business. With a knowing smile, Cassia tells her lawyer to exclude that demand. An enraged Douglas slams the table, threatening her with a future of poverty, but she vows to divorce him even if she has to starve. Cassia slams the table as well, matching his fury with equal angry resolve. She screams at him to stop wasting time and sign the papers immediately. Douglas finally agrees, but on the condition that she leaves the estate by the end of the day. Cassia looks him in the eye and declares that they are finally completely strangers. Royer formally thanks Douglas, whose shock turns to fury. He demands to know what they are planning. Royer coldly informs the Duke that his true master has always been Lady Cassia. Suddenly, the pink-haired maid, Amy, bursts in, announcing that she and the others will follow Cassia. Cassia is stunned into silence as both Amy and the head maid, Linda, stand ready to leave with her. Douglas erupts in fury, slamming the table and accusing them all of conspiring against him. Amy, Linda, and Royer stand united, declaring their unwavering loyalty is to Miss Cassia alone. Deeply moved by their loyalty, Cassia looks at her maid, Amy, with tears in her eyes. Clutching the signed papers, Cassia thinks she never expected them to go this far for her. She worries it's reckless to take 3 people with her when she has nowhere to go. Cassia begins to voice her hesitation as Amy steps forward to comfort her. Amy makes a promise for the future, and a crying Cassia thanks them, deciding they will all leave together. Now, in her traveling clothes, Cassia walks toward her carriage, sighing at the heavy challenges ahead. In the carriage, a concerned Amy asks if her lady is feeling all right. Amy notes that Cassia's complexion has been pale ever since the confrontation. Cassia admits to Amy with a wry smile that she does have many reasons to be worried. In a flashback, Cassia reflects on her new responsibility for those who followed her. Royer suddenly stands up, insisting she shouldn't have to go this far for. There's Sake. He and Linda reassure Cassia not to worry, as they are prepared for whatever is to come. Cassia looks at her loyal followers, moved by their selfless devotion, and smiles. She reassures them, admitting things might be tough, but promising not to let them worry. With a determined look, she vows to secure a stable life for all of them as soon as possible. Cassia instructs Amy and Linda to watch the luggage, which they happily agree to. She then tells a confused Royer that he's coming with her, hinting at their obvious destination. Standing on a bustling city street, Cassia announces their first priority is to find a house. She excitedly announces their arrival at a large brick building. Inside, a woman with her brown hair in a bun formally welcomes them. Cassia rushes forward and grabs the woman's hands, calling her Helena. Cassia flusters, remembering that Helena wouldn't recognize her now, and asks what she can do for them. Realizing her mistake, Cassia smiles nervously and asks to rent the house at 3 Central Avenue. The woman behind the counter asks how she heard about that specific place. Helena asks them to wait a moment while she checks the registry. Cassia has a sudden realization. As Helena flips through the registry, Cassia worries the house isn't listed yet. She considers that if it was just listed, the price might not be what she remembers. Helena returns with a listing, asking about their price range. Cassia looks at the document, wondering if they can make the deal work. Helena explains it's an urgent sale, and they'll have to sell to any buyer who appears, regardless of the price. She then sighs, stating she must inform them of the property's history before proceeding. Cassia and Royer listen intently to the explanation. Helena pleads with them to reconsider, her face pained. A narrator reveals that the house at 3 Central Avenue was the site of a forced family suicide that shocked the capital. However, with the case being retried, Cassia knows its value is about to skyrocket for another reason. In the now dilapidated house, Cassia happily accepts Royer's congratulations on her freedom. A concerned Royer asks Cassia how she knew about this specific house. Cassia tells him with a playful smile that it's a secret. Royer is left speechless, baffled by her mysterious knowledge. He laughs, understanding that from now on, he just needs to follow Lady Cassia's lead. Cassia looks at the boarded-up windows with a lovely expression of contentment, thinking she's already grown fond of the place. She excitedly rips off the boards, declaring it a new beginning, before suddenly letting out a scream. After her outburst, a confused Cassia looks around. Her startled maids, Linda and Amy, rush over, and Cassia greets them by name. Linda sternly asks Cassia why she would buy this house. Amy optimistically notes that with a little cleaning, it will be a very spacious home. Royer announces he's going to buy supplies and asks about money. He offers to cover the cost for now, and Cassia realizes he's trying to help her save face. She accepts his offer, promising to pay him back with interest, which he readily agrees to. A quick montage shows a dusty vanity being wiped clean. Sunlight streams in, illuminating the newly clean table. With just a little effort, Cassia, Amy, and Royer marvel at how the place has been completely transformed. Cassia is surprised with a glass of champagne. Amy and Royer declare they must celebrate Miss Cassia's newfound freedom, while elsewhere, a bitter Douglas notes how quickly they betrayed him. Royer gives a thoughtful cough. Amy proposes a toast to Miss Cassia's new beginning, and the three of them smile and clink glasses. Their glasses meet in a cheerful toast. Cassia beams, genuinely happy for the first time in years. Now seated, a knock at the door catches Cassia's attention. She peeks through the crack, wondering who the visitor could be. Helena, the woman with the brown bun, cheerfully asks if they've finished cleaning the house. A white-haired woman approaches with a paper bag, receiving a gift to celebrate her new life. Helena smiles, hoping the small gift suits the visitor's taste. Helena has an emotional outburst, pulling the white-haired woman into a sudden hug. Cassia looks up at her new home, filled with sincere gratitude. Embracing Helena, Cassia recalls how this friend helped her find a small room when she was cast out with nothing. With tears in her eyes, Cassia thinks there's no one better than Helena. Cassia cheerfully asks Helena to let her know if she has any properties that won't sell. Helena smiles warmly, gracefully accepting Cassia's business proposal. Now changed into business attire, Cassia announces her plan to inspect the mine today. Royer notes Cassia's excitement, and she brightly explains that she's finally truly free, no longer having to worry about the judging eyes of others. Just as she's thinking she'll never have to see Douglas again, she stops in her tracks, shocked to see him standing right in front of her. A blond man with blue eyes looks back at her with a surprised expression. Douglas demands to know how she found this place, accusing her of having him followed. He claims he was worried strange rumors would spread after the divorce, which confuses Cassia. With a sneer, Douglas suggests people might think she ran off with another man. His blue eyes narrow with manipulative intent. Douglas points out that she did indeed leave with her lawyer, Royer, shocking them both. Cassia erupts in fury, demanding to know why he came all this way, just to say such trivial things. She confronts him, ordering him to leave at once if he's only going to spout meaningless nonsense. Cassia sighs in annoyance, asking if he shouldn't be with his pregnant wife. Against a swirling dark background, Douglas drops a bombshell. Catherine isn't actually pregnant. Cassia scoffs internally, only now realizing her ex-husband is a complete idiot. She coldly suggests he should stay by Catherine's side, especially if she's in pain. Cassia gives him a look of complete disinterest and finality. As Douglas looks utterly defeated, she tells him to discuss everything with Catherine from now on. The pink-haired maid, Amy, apologizes for not stopping Douglas, but Cassia reassures her that you can't stop a fool and asks her to sprinkle some salt outside. Amy takes a note from Cassia, a determined look on the pink-haired maid's face. Royer watches as a no-entry sign is posted on the door, pleased with Miss Cassia's firm resolve. Cassia scoffs, wondering if Douglas really thought his visit would shake her. She smiles at a satisfied Royer, saying they're late and need to get going. A thought bubble reveals a stunning possibility. The diamonds of Ryazam were depleted because Douglas used them all up. The scene shifts to the dark, wooden interior of a mine, with tracks leading into the deep darkness. Royer explains that because the former Duke disapproved of Douglas's spending, he could no longer access the family funds. Cassia realizes Douglas had been squandering money from her mine to fund his lifestyle, just as Royer asks why she wanted this worthless property back. While Royer is still worried about the cleanup costs of the abandoned mine, Cassia confidently declares it's actually very valuable. An older, bearded man greets Miss Cassia, asking what brings her to the mine. Cassia explains her visit, and the manager confirms that diamond mining is no longer viable. With a knowing smile, Cassia begins to unveil her true plan. She and Royer gazed in amazement at the cave walls covered in sparkling blue crystals, with Royer wondering how it was possible. Royer noted that they weren't diamonds, but something similar, while Cassia watched from the side with a smug smile. She victoriously declared that this was exactly what she had been looking for, shocking her companion. The manager warned that the shiny stones might be worthless, but Cassia assured him that she knew someone who could unlock their true value. In a workshop, a blonde woman was polishing a golden statue as she announced that their next stop was Exicom. The name Exicom echoed over a scene of a peaceful, sunlit forest. Royer anxiously warned their coachman that Exicom was too dangerous, no matter the pay. Cassia, however, calmly asked the nervous driver to simply take them to the edge of the territory. The driver reluctantly agreed, and Cassia cheerfully thanked him before she and Royer prepared to board. Inside the moving carriage, Cassia looked ahead with a determined smile, anticipating the key to her success. The carriage stopped at the shadowy edge of a town, where the driver explained he could go no further towards Exicom. With a determined look, Cassia told Royer it was time to go, and he readily agreed. In a dimly lit workshop, Royer found the surroundings unfamiliar and strange, and a nervous Cassia agreed. A blonde woman in an apron looked up from her work, warily asking who they were and what they wanted. Cassia stated she wanted to commission a piece, but the blonde woman informed her that they didn't accept private orders. Undeterred, Cassia asked the skeptical artisan to at least look at what she had brought. Upon seeing the item, the artisan's eyes widened in surprise. Holding the glowing blue crystal, the artisan blinked, clearly intrigued, and asked what Cassia wanted her to make. Cassia requested a piece that would best highlight the crystal's charm, and the artisan correctly guessed she had a business proposal in mind. The excited artisan asked if Cassia had more of the crystals, and Cassia happily confirmed she had a large supply. The blonde artisan contemplated the offer with a thoughtful expression. Holding the crystal, the artisan agreed to the commission with one exclusive condition. She would be the only one to work with the crystals. Cassia was overjoyed, celebrating her successful negotiation. A flashback revealed that the artisan had discovered the glowing mineral at age 15 and began creating with it. The narration explained that she named the mineral crystal, and it later became a key element in fine jewelry. However, the narration revealed that the young artisan, Jerry, knew nothing of business and was manipulated by someone who monopolized her discovery. The manipulator, with a sinister smile, was revealed to be none other than Douglas. Cassia swore to herself that she would never let Douglas exploit such a genius again, knowing she had to intervene to change Jerry's fate. Back in the present, Cassia and Jerry smiled and shook hands, sealing their new partnership. Outside at night, Royer commented to Lady Cassia that their future looked to be very busy. He detailed their tasks, from negotiating with miners to securing information on the minerals, secret from the outside world. Cassia instructed Royer to prepare a contract to partner with Jerry as an equal in the industry. Royer questioned if it wouldn't be more profitable to simply hire her, and Cassia confirmed that was precisely the point. A heartwarming memory showed Jerry with a large family she needed to support. Cassia smiled knowingly, asking if Royer now understood her reason for choosing partnership over employment. Their conversation was interrupted by an angry shout nearby, as a man cursed someone out and declared he'd had enough. they saw a dark-haired man pinning another man against a wall, berating him for his arrogance. After kicking the man to the ground, the dark-haired man sighed in relief, glad to have let off some steam. Cassia and a worried Royer watched the violent conflict quietly from a distance. The man on the ground left, and as the dark-haired man turned towards them, Cassia watched him with a hint of concern. The bruised man grabbed Cassia's hand, offering to let her take her stress out on him in exchange for money. He stated his price was 1 silver coin per minute, causing a stunned Royer to cry out in disbelief. Cassia calmly clarified his offer, asking if paying him meant she could vent her frustrations on him as she pleased. In a cute, chibi moment, Cassia scolded him for not understanding how the world works. She explained that in the current climate, one couldn't even become a mercenary without a letter of recommendation. Cassia asked pointedly if he was jobless because his skills weren't good enough. He stubbornly looked away, insisting he just hadn't had a chance to prove his abilities. Cassia observed him with a cool, calculating expression, while Royer snickered on the side. Cassia formally rejected the man's offer to be beaten. The two stood silently, staring at each other. The man moved closer and changed his offer, saying that room and board would be enough as payment. Flustered by his sudden proximity and proposal, Cassia pushed him away, shouting that he'd get her in trouble. She struggled for a moment, trying to recall if she knew his name. The man looked down with a melancholic expression, revealing that he couldn't remember his own name. A promotional banner displayed other series available from the publisher. Cassia looked at him with a hesitant and pensive expression, contemplating his strange situation. The man confirmed her unspoken question, stating he had woken up in the mountains with his memory gone. Cassia asked if he came down the mountain unscathed, which he nonchalantly confirmed, asking why she was asking. She exploded, shouting that of course it was an issue and asking if he knew how dangerous that mountain was. She explained that Exicom was feared because it was crawling with monsters, which was why their coachman had refused to enter. Cassia considered that if he could come down from a monster-infested mountain unscathed, he must be incredibly strong. The dark-haired man looked at her expectantly, asking if she was going to hire him. A worried Royer stepped forward, ready to voice his objections to Lady Cassia. Cassia weighed her strategy, realizing this man would be very useful if her ex-husband, Douglas, showed up uninvited again. Royer internally admitted that the man's impressive strength was indeed far more reliable than his own. Royer, looking concerned, admitted to Cassia that he was indeed worried and hoped to rely on him for protection. The dark-haired man leaned in close to Cassia, staring at her directly, waiting for her decision. Cassia confirmed his offer, asking if he was truly willing to be her bodyguard for just room and board. With a decisive look, Cassia agreed to take him on a trial basis, promising a handsome reward if he performed well. The newly hired man simply asked what she wanted to do now. The scene shifted to their carriage parked outside a townhouse on a sunny street. A dark-haired maid cried out in surprise upon Lady Cassia's return. Cassia asked the nervous-looking maid why she was outside, and the maid began to explain. The maid expressed her relief, telling Cassia she was finally back. A flashback showed Douglas condescendingly reminding Cassia that she was once his wife and questioning the propriety of her living with Royer. Cassia's intuition told her that something was still off about the whole situation. Douglas appeared, his eyes narrowing as he angrily demanded to know who the man with Cassia was. Cassia moved protectively in front of the man, warning Douglas to speak respectfully and announcing that he was her bodyguard. A stunned Douglas could only stammer, asking what she had just said. He repeated her words in disbelief, "Your bodyguard?" As she and the man stood together defiantly, Cassia internally scoffed at Douglas, thinking he must assume she had found another man. She sneered at his predictable reaction, calling him a truly despicable person. Angered by his insults towards her and her companion, she glared at him with contempt. Cassia angrily pointed at Douglas, ordering him to leave at once before he was publicly humiliated. And enraged, Douglas shot back that his silence was not permission for her to spout nonsense, and raised his hand to strike her. Smack! The bodyguard blocked the blow, a red mark appearing on his face as he shielded Cassia. The bodyguard stepped forward, coldly informing a shocked Douglas that his master wished to end the conversation. He told Douglas to please leave for the day, his eyes glowing with a menacing light. Douglas's eyes widened, and he trembled in fear at the bodyguard's intimidating presence. His mind racing, he retreated to his carriage, questioning the bodyguard's arrogant attitude. Douglas shook his fist and left with a threat, vowing to make her pay for this. His final warning was that he would not forgive any rumors that tarnished his family's name. After Douglas left, Cassia finally let out a deep sigh of relief. Later, Royer and a maid stood quietly by a prepared dining table. The pink-haired maid, Amy, tentatively addressed Lady Cassia at the table. Looking at the new man who was devouring his food, Amy asked who he was. Cassia cheerfully explained that he was the new bodyguard she had hired. Cassia turned to him, realizing she hadn't yet asked his name. The bodyguard looked up and casually told her to call him whatever she wanted. Royer suggested Ryan for its meaning, but the man immediately rejected it. Cassia playfully noted that for someone who said whatever, he was already being picky. She then proposed shortening the lion theme and just calling him Leo. He considered the name for a moment, then looked at Cassia and agreed that he liked Leo. Leo gave a charming hint of a smile, pleased with his new name. The scene shifted to Jerry's workshop, where the young artisan stood up abruptly at the sound of visitors. Cassia, Royer, and Leo had arrived, and Jerry, surprised by their early arrival, greeted them. Cassia smiled warmly, explaining that she had rushed over as soon as she received Jerry's message. Jerry nervously handed over a box, telling Cassia she hoped she would like the finished piece. With a soft click, Cassia opened the box in the busy, crate-filled workshop. Inside was a collection of exquisite jewelry made from the glowing blue crystals, shimmering magnificently. In a cute, chibi moment, Cassia eagerly asked for Jerry's opinion, and Jerry happily declared the jewelry was amazing. Jerry looked up with a brilliant smile, her eyes shining with joy and gratitude. Jerry's thoughts drifted to Cassia's surprising offer to send her family to the academy. Cassia assured Jerry that her work would be a huge success, but mentioned there was one problem. Cassia gently suggested that as Jerry's income grew, it would become difficult for her to manage the funds on her own. Jerry was shocked as Cassia offered to help manage her finances and find a hospital for her mother. Jerry thought to herself that with Cassia's help, she could finally focus on her work without worrying about her family's future. Jerry thanked Cassia with tears in her eyes, and Cassia returned a warm, reassuring smile. Cassia took Jerry's hands, insisting that she was the one who should be grateful for the partnership. With a brilliant smile, Cassia thanked Jerry for giving her the opportunity to work with someone so wonderful. In chibi form, Cassia proposed signing the contract, and Jerry enthusiastically agreed. Outside, Royer expressed his relief that the contract signing went smoothly, and Cassia agreed that things were going well so far. A panicked Royer scolded Leo for daring to touch the former Duchess so boldly, but Leo silenced him with a sharp, with a serious gaze. Leo quietly revealed that they were being followed. A confused Royer could only react with a bewildered huh. Leo placed a protective hand on Cassia's shoulder, advising her to stay by his side just in case. Cassia grew anxious, wondering if the person following them was a spy sent by Douglas. The narration described Exicum as a violent place where a person could easily disappear without a trace. Just as Cassia thought they could escape to the carriage, someone suddenly called her name, making her flinch. Her eyes widened in fear. As she turned towards the voice, TSK, a masked assailant rushed forward with a knife, but Leo moved quickly, shielding Cassia from the attack. Cassia screamed Leo's name as his arm was cut. He urgently told them to get to the carriage as rain began to fall. Royer hurried a worried Cassia towards the safety of the carriage. Leo blocked the attackers with a glowing magic barrier, yelling at his companions to go. Inside the moving carriage, a panicked Cassia looked back, while Leo shouted for her to stay put where it was safe. Cassia cried out in terror for Leo, who stood his ground alone with his sword drawn. Leo's eyes widened as he spotted another threat, desperately shouting a warning to be careful. The carriage sped down the street, leaving Leo to face the danger alone. With a heavy thud, Leo was knocked to the ground as the carriage rushed past, his sword skittering to the side. Leo, looking dazed and bruised, stared blankly into the distance. Cassia rushed to Leo's side, cupping his face as she anxiously checked him for injuries. Cassia glanced at their attacker, noting he appeared to be unconscious. She observed that there was nothing unusual about him besides his mask, and wondered if any identification was hidden in his clothes. Royer anxiously warned Cassia to stay away from the unconscious man, worried it was too dangerous. The narration speculated that the attacker was from the notorious Black Death gang, whose members all had tattoos. Ignoring the warning, Cassia knelt to search the unconscious man, startling her companions. Leo firmly grabbed Cassia's wrist, telling her to wait. He reminded her that they were in a public place, which confused Cassia. Leo teased that if she was that curious, he could offer his own body for her to inspect, causing Cassia to recoil in shock, her face flushing red. Cassia insisted that wasn't what she meant, while Royer's unhelpful comment only added to her frustration. The pink-haired maid, Amy, interrupted the scene, delivering a letter addressed to Lady Cassia. Cassia's expression turned serious when she realized the letter was from the court. A sense of nervousness washed over her as she held the official-looking envelope. Cassia worriedly asked Royer if something had gone wrong with the divorce, but he assured her there were no complications. Still holding the letter, Cassia, confused and anxious, questioned why the court would be contacting her. Noticing her distressed state as she opened the letter, Royer asked what was wrong. Royer leaned in to look at the document, his worried expression mirroring Cassia's unease. His eyes widened in absolute shock and disbelief as he read what was on the paper. Staring at the official document, Royer exclaimed that its contents were simply impossible. Recalling her past, Cassia declared internally that she was born an orphan and wouldn't have grown up in an orphanage if she had parents. The frame focused on a solemn-looking Royer, standing in profile against a decorative floral background. A flustered Royer contemplated the news. Viscount Bread was claiming him as his illegitimate son and wanted to add him to the family register. The narration explained that the registration process was already underway, legally compelling Royer to serve the ducal house as an heir. Cassia looked at him thoughtfully, asking if the name Viscount Bread reminded him of anything. Royer replied that while he had spoken to the man once, he had no actual connection to him. Cassia slapped the document, angrily concluding that this must be another one of Douglas's despicable schemes. She fell into thought, contemplating their next move. Leo suddenly leaned in from behind a startled Cassia, asking what was wrong. After scolding him for appearing out of nowhere, Cassia offered him a slice of apple pie. Leo ate the pie. Cassia asked why he looked so glum, but he quickly denied her guess that he'd been dumped. Cassia handed him the official letter, explaining she had just received it. As Leo looked over the letter, a determined Royer told Cassia that he had intended to handle this himself. In a cute, chibi moment, a serious Royer sat. Across from a pensive Cassia, Royer leaned forward urgently, asking if Cassia had a way to handle the situation. Cassia stood up confidently, assuring a teary-eyed Royer that she would protect him. Struck by her confidence, a shocked Leo could only mutter to himself. He reminded a smiling Cassia that the magic tower was a restricted place and couldn't be visited casually. A flustered Leo reacted strongly when Cassia explained she was making the request because she believed he was capable enough to handle it. Hearing his reaction, Cassia let out a cheerful laugh. Cassia challenged him to see it as a chance to show off his skills, but Leo was worried about her safety while he was away. She smiled playfully and gave him a condition: to be back before the trial. She then handed him something, adding one more thing to her request. As Leo set off for the magic tower, he glanced back worriedly, while Cassia waved a cheerful goodbye, telling him to be careful. Now alone, Cassia considered her plan to meet with Jerry again. She voiced her concern about going to the dangerous Exicom region without Leo, which startled Royer. Royer flatly agreed, insisting it was unthinkable to go back there after the recent attack. Cassia sighed in disappointment, realizing her plan wouldn't work for now. A light bulb went off as her eyes lit up with a new idea. She enthusiastically suggested they go to the temple for a blessing before Leo returned. A surprised Royer questioned the sudden trip, and Cassia explained shyly that she wanted to pray for the success of their business. She admitted to herself that the idea to visit the temple was indeed quite sudden. Her thoughts turned to a specific priest at the temple, one known for being attentive to the hearts of women. He was famously known as the priest who understands a woman's heart. Inside, a priest with a long white braid turned to greet them with a charming smile. The priest welcomed his beautiful lady. As well, he gently kissed her hand, offering a blessing for her poor soul. The overly forward gesture left both Cassia and Royer completely stunned. Breaking a sweat, Cassia mentally ordered herself to be calm, composed, and dignified. She struck an elegant, if slightly flustered, pose to regain her composure. Cassia told the priest that her prayers might not be enough, and asked if they could pray together for her repentance. and rebirth. As Cassia offered a token of her sincerity, a horrified Royer was enveloped in a sinister purple aura. The priest dramatically knelt, declaring that God had made the right choice, while a bewildered Royer wondered if he was serious. He held up the blue gem Cassia offered, marveling that even its name, Crystal, was beautiful. The priest thanked Cassia for her piety, privately thinking that God would help her do her best for him. The two exchanged a smile, having successfully established a friendly rapport. The scene paused for a brief explanation of Cassia's plan. She revealed the priest's name was Travis, a man known for his playboy reputation. The screen showed Travis striking a dramatic pose while his adoring, love-struck female followers fawned over him from below. Because noble ladies constantly flocked to see him, Cassia knew it was the perfect place to promote her new crystal jewelry. Cassia crossed her arms and smirked sinisterly, a dark purple aura emanating from her as her plan unfolded. With a serious expression, she confirmed to herself that her plan seemed to be proceeding smoothly. Outside the temple, Cassia suddenly called out Royer's name, feigning surprise. Her thoughts betrayed her innocent act as she reminded herself to claim she was only there for a blessing. Royer saw through her, recalling their true purpose for visiting the playboy priest. He reminded Cassia to be careful with her words, warning that rumors could be troublesome. Understanding her intentions, Royer stood by the carriage and asked about their next move. Cassia fell into thought, quietly considering the processing methods for her new jewelry line. As an idea struck, she smiled brightly, eager to start right away. Royer looked at her with concern, asking if she wasn't tired, and wanted to start immediately. A motivated Cassia smiled warmly, assuring him she was fine and thinking of how hard Leo was working. Meanwhile, at the gloomy magic tower, an unseen person sighed that they hated trying hard too. Work. An exhausted Leo let out a deep sigh, clearly drained from his search. He waded through a patch of glowing blue leaves, in disbelief that he had actually found the hidden location. He noted that for some reason, he had a strong feeling it was here. Leo pushed aside the magical plants, searching for the tower's entrance. His eyes narrowed as he realized special permission was needed to enter the restricted area. Leo pushed against a glowing pink magic barrier, struggling to force his way through. He gritted his teeth in shock and frustration as the powerful barrier held firm against him. As a magical mist swirled around him, Leo wondered what on earth was happening. A blue-haired little boy with tired eyes emerged from the mist, asking if he was looking for the magic tower. A surprised Leo looked down at the child, realizing he must be a gatekeeper. Leo stated he was there to see someone and handed the gatekeeper a piece of paper. The blue-haired boy, with a skeptical and dismissive expression, studied the note. His eyes widened in absolute terror as he read the name, nervously asking if Leo was sure this was the person he was looking for. Leo confirmed and asked if there was a problem, while the gatekeeper trembled with unease. The gatekeeper reluctantly agreed to take him there, but warned Leo not to say he hadn't warned him before turning to leave. As the gatekeeper vanished, Leo shouted for him to wait, but he was left alone in front of the glowing pink barrier. Zap! A magical force suddenly pulled Leo through the barrier, and he landed in front of a mysterious figure. Leo found himself standing before a dark-skinned man with red eyes, who introduced himself as Melvin, a mage of the magic tower. Melvin scrutinized Leo's face, his expression unreadable as he sized him up. Sizzle. Melvin touched Leo's forehead with a glowing finger, sending a jolt of pain through him. Melvin's crimson eyes flashed intensely as he demanded to know what scheme Leo was plotting. He declared that the magic tower was a neutral entity that belonged to no one. Melvin refused him, stating the tower rejected political involvement, but Leo quickly tried to explain. Leo clarified that he wasn't there on behalf of the state, prompting Melvin to ask why he had come. As Leo hesitated, Melvin stared at him from behind, waiting for an answer, surrounded by a magicaloha. Melvin, looking bored, rested his chin on his hand and coldly asked what would happen if he refused Leo's request. In a moonlit forest, Leo declared that if Melvin insisted on refusing, then he would have to resort to force, preparing to unleash a powerful magic attack. A faint, unimpressed smile touched Melvin's lips as he told Leo he had crossed the line. The scene shifted to a handsome young man with blonde hair and blue eyes, surrounded by flowers. A close-up revealed his sharp, calculating blue eyes. The blonde man greeted Cassia and Royer upon their arrival, saying they were finally here. The blonde man offered a polite smile, but Cassia stared back at him with a cold, serious expression. He chuckled, asking her not to look at him with such a scary glare and adding that he'd had his share of trouble because of her too. Cassia turned away without a word, her silence unnerving him. The blonde man's smile vanished, his expression turning worried in the face of her cold reception. The stern-looking Viscount Bread, an older man with a mustache and a large gem on his cravat, appeared in a panel. The blonde man looked at Cassia and told her to please proceed. The blonde man sat with his arms crossed, while his lawyer, a dark-haired man with a monocle, watched seriously. The opposing lawyer began his argument, stating that the day Viscount Bread's son went missing coincided with the day a boy named Royer entered the orphanage. He continued by describing the missing son as having brown hair and eyes and a slender build, sweating as he presented his case. The lawyer added that the orphanage records described Royer as being smaller than his peers, further emphasizing his point. A somber Royer stood silently as these arguments were made against him. Royer looked up with renewed determination, ready to face the accusations. The blonde man spoke dismissively to Viscount Bread, while Royer asked if they could proceed with their own statement. The blonde man agreed. A mysterious voice asked if it was finally his turn as Melvin, the mage of the magic tower, suddenly appeared behind Royer. "Whoa!" Royer yelped, startled by Melvin's sudden and silent appearance. Melvin, the master of the magic tower, introduced himself with a confident smirk. Melvin stood behind a seated Cassia, looking down at her curiously. He asked Cassia directly if she was the one who requested the blood relation confirmation. Royer interjected, asking Melvin to confirm whether he had a parental relationship with Viscount Bread. A sweating Viscount Bread glared angrily at the proceedings. Objection. A hand slammed down on the table in protest. The blonde man's lawyer objects, claiming he's never heard of paternity being confirmed with magic and questioning Melvin's identity. Cassia, surrounded by a dark aura, scoffs inwardly, thinking the lawyer is a fool for daring to question the Tower Master. The flustered lawyer has the amused blonde man sit down. An old man with a gray beard stands up, personally confirming that Melvin is indeed the Tower Master. The blonde man's lawyer is left speechless by the unexpected testimony. The Emperor, a man in splendid royal attire, makes a grand and sparkling entrance. The Emperor smiles, explaining he came in person after hearing the Tower Master was here. Standing beside a stoic Melvin, the Emperor notes that seeing the Tower Master is a rare opportunity. Melvin gives a slight nod to the Emperor. In an out-prepared hall, Melvin announces, "It is time to begin." Holding a glowing magical artifact, Melvin instructs them to each give a drop of blood to confirm their lineage. A shocked Viscount Bread flinches at the request, to which Melvin simply replies, "HM?" Melvin questions his surprise, stating it's the most accurate method. As the artifact surges with power, Melvin turns his back to them and announces the result. It seems there is no blood relation between Royer and Viscount Bread. Inside the artifact, the two drops of blood violently repel each other, confirming Melvin's words. The opposing lawyer stammers in disbelief, demanding to know how they can trust this result, and Melvin offers to give him a demonstration. Melvin turns to the Emperor, politely requesting his assistance for the demonstration. Seated, Cassia wonders who the Emperor could possibly be verifying his lineage with. No, it can't be. A look of horror dawns on Cassia's face as she realizes the implication. Leo suddenly appears, asking where he should place his drop of blood, leaving Cassia utterly stunned. Cassia's eyes widen as she stares in disbelief at Leo's unexpected appearance. A close-up reveals Leo's serious and concerned expression. The result is in, and Melvin holds the artifact, which now emits a brilliant and harmonious pink glow. He explains that this brilliant bloom is the reaction that confirms a blood relation. Melvin clarifies that unlike the previous test, blood that is related merges and glows brilliantly, rather than repelling each other. With a confident smirk, Melvin asks if the demonstration was easier to understand than they thought. Royer watches in silent shock as Melvin stands beside him, looking tired but resolute. Royer addresses the judge, concluding their argument. The judge contemplates for a moment before preparing to announce the verdict. The judge begins, acknowledging that the Tower Master has proven the lack of a blood tie. What? The blonde man shouts in shock as the judge rules that Royer will not be entered into Viscount Bread's family. registry. The judge finalizes the verdict, granting Royer the freedom to choose his profession, which brings a smile to Cassia's face and has Royer pumping his fist in celebration. Cassia laughs with heartfelt relief, glad their efforts paid off. Cassia tells Royer she's stepping out for some air and asks him to find her later, to which he agrees. Alone, Cassia stands before an ornate door, taking a moment for herself. Reeling from the recent revelations, Cassia trembles, feeling like her head can't keep up. Her mind races, processing the Tower Master, the Emperor, and now the news that Leo is royalty. It's all too much. As she stands in the hallway, a voice calls her name. Cassia turns with a slight smile, calmly asking what the person wants. The blonde man stands with his arms crossed, questioning if she really had to take things this far. He angrily explains that he did all this to give her a chance to come back to him. Cassia glares at him defiantly, scoffing at his so-called chance. The blonde man asks if they're going to live like this forever, but she coldly states their relationship ended long ago. In response, he yells in frustration. Cassia sighs in annoyance, turning away and declaring there's no reasoning with him. She whips back around to face him, the sudden movement catching the blonde man off guard. She advances with a fierce glare, demanding to know what he just said. Surrounded by an illusion of roses, the blonde man confesses his love, claiming it was all a test. Seeing this, Cassia wonders if he's in his right mind. Cassia angrily accuses him of just wanting an obedient dog, but he argues he did it because he loves her and wanted confirmation. She calls him a fool, an idiot who uses other women to prop up his ego. The scene flashes back to a memory of him with another woman. The blonde man looks dejected as Cassia's narration explains he always wanted the upper hand while treating her coldly. A memory of a younger, heartbroken Cassia shows her concluding that such a person can only be called trash. Back in the present, the blonde man numbly repeats her insult, trash. The word hits him hard, leaving him trembling in shocked silence. Cassia looks at him with utter contempt, sighing that she's tired of his face, which always looks ready to hit her. Her eyes narrow in disgust as she scoffs at the idea of love. In a final, damning thought, she declares by name, Douglas, you are the worst man in history. With a crack, Leo suddenly appears and punches Douglas, whose face is bruised. Leo demands to know what he thinks he's doing. Cassia rushes to Leo's side, grabbing his arm in concern and asking if he's okay. She immediately starts scolding him, telling him to fix his habit of resorting to violence. Her words make Leo freeze, and as Cassia realizes what she implied, he asks if Douglas used to hit her. Leo ignores her question and turns away with a cold expression, prompting Cassia to ask what he's planning to do. Leo declares he's going to kill Douglas, who pales at the chilling threat. A brilliant golden magical energy, etched with glowing runes, begins to swirl around a determined Leo. Cassia is thrown back by the sudden surge of energy, watching in shock. Just then, Melvin appears, holding up an unconscious Douglas and telling a panicked Cassia not to worry, that he just put the overexcited man to sleep. A flashback begins, showing a young Leo being observed by two shadowy figures celebrating the birth of a legitimate heir, while the Empress is gravely ill. With the Empress weak, the nobles dismiss the first prince, and a young Leo overhears their cruel realism, clenching his fists. A young Leo stands alone, reflecting on how they spoke of his sick mother, making him feel useless to them. A close-up of a royal garment shows a fist clenching, thinking how infuriating those people are. A voice interrupts young Leo's somber thoughts, asking why he's making that face. A little girl with pigtails and white hair asks if he's unhappy, and calls him Big Brother. Young Leo looks flustered as the little girl takes his hand. He awkwardly denies being unhappy, and the girl tells him she's bored. The little girl asks Leo to carry her because her feet hurt, and before the shocked boy can answer, she clings to him, saying she's sleepy. Holding the sleeping girl, a flustered young Leo wonders what's wrong with everyone today. Later, young Leo sits by his mother's bedside, telling her he met a very special child. He recalls how the girl, whom he'd never seen before, suddenly asked him to carry her. He smiles warmly, thinking he didn't mind and felt needed for the first time. The flashback continues, showing a slightly older Leo standing thoughtfully in a sunny garden. He breaks into a bright, happy smile, Nearby, a young Cassia in a blue dress sits among flowers, looking back. Young Leo approaches and asks what she's doing alone. She replies that she's asking where her dad is. He looks at the statue she's talking to and asks if she means the statue, to which she enthusiastically agrees. He gives her a gentle, knowing smile. He explains that the statue is a guardian angel who keeps secrets, so he doubts it will tell her anything. In a cute, chibi fantasy sequence, a flustered young Cassia asks what she should do, while a smiling young Leo sits beside her. In another memory, a black-haired young Leo listens as a voiceover asks if he knows where her dad is. He kindly offers to help her look, extending a hand to the little white-haired girl sitting by a fountain. He hopes to himself that if they succeed in finding her father, maybe they can continue to see each other. He thinks, as he gently takes her hand. Suddenly, both children are startled by a sight in the garden. A man with long white hair and glasses appears, and Cassia's cheerful voice calls out, "Dad!" She runs happily to her father, while young Leo watches their reunion from a distance. Young Leo looks down with a hint of sadness, his hand going to the blue gem on his chest. Cassia's father politely dismisses young Leo, saying that while he appreciates the concern, the court attendants will look after her. Leo thinks to himself that unlike the cold nobles, this man's words carry a different tone. He replies that he understands. Watching the father lead Cassia into the sunny garden, he realizes with a heavy heart that it will probably be difficult to talk to her from now on. The realization leaves him standing alone in the garden, looking shocked and disappointed. A vivid memory of Cassia's happy laughter flashes through his mind. Her father speaks to her gently, suggesting they play something more fun next time. When her father says it's time to go, Cassia happily takes his hand and they walk away together. Young Leo forces a bright smile and calls out a cheerful goodbye, wishing Cassia well. The flashback ends as Leo's narration explains his father arranged a marriage for him, but it was ruined by a smirking blonde woman. Due to the schemes of Isabella, the second prince's mother, terrible rumors spread, ruining all his marriage prospects. Even Cassia's family rejected him, claiming they couldn't marry their daughter to a deposed crown prince. Before leaving to study abroad, he decided to see Cassia one last time. He recalls seeing her laughing innocently as a beautiful blue butterfly rested on her finger. He watched her from his hiding spot, content just to see that she was doing well. Back in the present, Leo reads a letter and learns that Cassia is divorced. His mood instantly brightens, thinking it's for the best since her husband sounded terrible. His thoughts are interrupted by a shocking piece of news. Cassia is an exocom. He's stunned, wondering why she would be in such a dangerous place and deciding to go to her at once. His eyes fill with determination as he vows that he can't let Cassia be in danger. He racks his brain, wondering if something went wrong after the divorce, as she should know the dangers of exocom. Finally, his search pays off, and he spots a weary-looking Cassia under the night sky, and thinks found her. He hesitates to approach, realizing his shabby attire would make him look suspicious, which leaves him at a loss for words. As she looks around nervously, he thinks resignedly that, of course, she wouldn't remember him. Approaching her, he makes a strange offer, suggesting she can take out her frustrations on him if she gives him money. Later, with a new scratch on his face, Leo looks dejectedly into the moonlit night, thinking it was all over. At the celebratory dinner, Leo thinks that he expected his identity to be revealed, but not this soon. He flashes back to the reveal, recalling how it happened in front of so many people. He worries that Cassia must be the most confused by it and would no longer want him as a bodyguard. His chaotic thoughts are interrupted when she turns to him with a bright, disarming smile. She happily encourages him to eat, insisting they must feast to celebrate the happy day. Caught off guard by her cheerful demeanor, a flustered Leo can only manage a small ah. Cassia watches him with a knowing and slightly mischievous smirk. Leo composes himself, smiling and raising his glass in grateful acceptance of her celebratory mood. In a cute narration, Cassia notes that he seems lost in thought after the day's surprising events. A hearty laugh escapes her lips at the thought of his pensive look. She admits to herself that she was also completely shocked by everything that happened. Later, reviewing documents in the library with the man in glasses, Cassia expresses her disbelief. She processes the shocking truth. Leo is the late Empress's son who was supposed to inherit the throne. She incorrectly concludes he must have been desperate to be in such a tight spot, a theory labeled as comically wrong. The man in glasses leans in with a question, What about having her keep Leo on as a bodyguard? In the Sunlit Library, a voice mentions that such an arrangement would normally be impossible due to his status. The man in glasses finishes his thought, suggesting that in the current situation, the arrangement wouldn't be bad for either of them. Cassia considers his proposal, thinking it would be beneficial for both Leo and herself. Her thoughts are interrupted by a voice, and after a brief HM, she calls out, "Come in." A pink-haired maid bursts through the door, urgently calling for Lady Cassia. The maid nervously announces that a letter has arrived, her heart filled with dread that it might be from the court again. As the maid hesitates, Cassia looks at her suspiciously, wondering what's causing the delay. A sudden, terrible thought strikes Cassia, and her eyes widen in alarm. She flashes back to a painful memory of Douglas threatening her, her heart filling with renewed anger as she vows to teach that good-for-nothing a lesson. The maid quickly clarifies that the letter isn't from him, but from the Imperial Palace. Cassia looks up, momentarily stunned by the unexpected news. The words echo in her mind as she processes the shock of receiving a letter directly from the palace. Holding the official-looking scroll, she nervously wonders what on earth the palace could want with her. Her panicked imagination runs wild, picturing herself as a little devil being punished for overworking someone from the palace. She argues that she was going to pay him well, while the man in glasses nervously suggests they open the letter. She agrees with a sly smile. As she unrolls the scroll, she admits to herself that she's strangely nervous. As Cassia reads, the man in glasses leans in anxiously, asking what it says. She reveals the simple request. The palace is just asking her to take care of Leo. Holding the scroll, she admits her surprise that they would entrust Leo to her so easily. She crosses her arms with a confident look, concluding that this arrangement is ultimately beneficial for her. The scene cuts to Leo's back as he stands on a balcony. Later at dinner, Cassia glances toward the door, wondering who might be visiting. Her expression sours when the man in glasses asks if she's expecting someone, and she angrily wonders if Douglas would dare show up again. She immediately orders her maid, Amy, to fetch salt, much to the maid's confusion. Convinced the visitor is Douglas, she yells that reasoning is useless and she'll drive him away with salt, roaring for him to leave. Her tirade comes to a halt as she looks out the window in confusion. She wonders if she was mistaken, as no one is there. A voice from below tells her to look down, and a small, white-haired boy with glasses sarcastically asks if this intense welcome is standard procedure. Cassia's eyes widen in shock and embarrassment, a blush creeping onto her face. The scene flashes back to the patent office a few days prior, with Cassia and the man in glasses present. The man asks if Cassia is looking for someone, and she confirms she is. She gasps in surprise when she sees someone. Her gaze lands on the little white-haired boy, standing elegantly among the flowers. She finds herself staring, wondering why he's looking her way and if she's being too obvious. Noticing her gaze, the boy turns and politely asks if she needs something from him. A flustered but smiling Cassia begins to compliment him. He accepts the compliment, replying that she has good taste. Cassia asks if he's also here to file a patent. He confirms and offers to show her his, summoning his attendant, Royer, to bring the sample. Royer, the man in glasses, asks if it's okay to show him, but Cassia waves it off, saying it's a good way to pass the time while waiting. Royer agrees and brings out an ornate wooden box. Royer inwardly wonders if the child will just see the item as a shiny toy. To his surprise, the boy immediately assesses it as a good product that would sell well if its durability were improved. The boy astutely points out the importance of its excellent luster and durability, shocking Royer with his insight. Examining the accessory, he adds that it shouldn't break or tarnish easily. Cassia is impressed, realizing he saw through it all at a glance, and thinking he truly is the child who brings good fortune. The boy suggests comparing the item to other patents being filed that day. After a moment of thought, he confidently declares it's the most marketable item he's seen recently. Deeply moved, Cassia asks the white-haired boy if he's always been interested in patents, and he confirms it's fun. She then proposes that he share his knowledge. With a confident smile, Cassia clarifies that she won't ask him to work for free. The boy looks a bit flustered, asking if she really intends to believe everything. He says. Cassia assures him he doesn't look like a swindler and urges him to tell her everything, which he considers with a serious expression. As she waves goodbye to the man in glasses, Cassia smiles and tells the boy she'll visit him another day. The man in glasses wonders how the boy could possibly find her place, but the boy walks off, confident he can manage. The white-haired boy stops, a thoughtful and determined look on his face. Now at Cassia's residence, a voice asks if this is their first meeting, and another nervously agrees. The white-haired boy looks at the mountain of sweets on the table with a tired and overwhelmed expression. He asks what this is all for, and Cassia cheerfully replies that it's a treat for their guest. As the pink-haired maid gushes about how cute Cassia's new friend is, the man in glasses recognizes the boy from the patent office. The boy takes a bite of food, chewing thoughtfully with his cheeks puffed out. He pauses when Cassia addresses him as Eth, stating that it's his name and only a select few are allowed to use it. Eth closes his eyes, telling her to be grateful, before continuing to eat. Cassia's sudden burst of laughter surprises Eth, who argues that he's the oldest one there. She just finds his serious demeanor cute. Her comment leaves Eth speechless and blushing. As he struggles with his embarrassment, a dark-skinned, red-eyed man watches them from across the table. The red-eyed man takes a sip of his drink with a knowing smirk. Eth regains his composure, stating this isn't why he came. As he takes another bite of cake, he pauses, his expression turning serious as he prepares to speak. Cassia leans forward eagerly, asking if he's brought her any interesting news. A voice confirms there is news, though it's not all fun. Eth looks at her seriously and announces he has both good news and bad news. Cassia and her staff gather around the table, listening intently to Eth. Eth, holding his fork over a dessert, begins to deliver his important message. His eyes narrow with intensity, emphasizing the importance of what he's about to say. Eth starts with the bad news. Douglas hasn't given up and recently drove away his mistress, which makes Cassia flinch in shock, wondering if he means Catherine. Then, he delivers the good news. Her crystals are gaining popularity just as they'd hoped. As word of the jewelry spreads, letters from people wanting to buy it are pouring in. The narration explains that the product's success is thanks to a certain priest. Cassia listens to the report with a cool, analytical expression. She thinks with a smug smile that the womanizing priest finally did his job right. Eth offers one last piece of advice, telling her she should be wary of men. Cassia questions his warning, confused. Eth explains his belief that more men will start, targeting her as he continues to eat. Now, Eth specifically points out the flirtatious-looking mage sitting at their table. The red-eyed mage looks up from his drink, coldly asking what Eth is implying about him. Eth asks if Cassia is already involved with the mage, prompting both her and the man to deny it irritably. Cassia offers him a box of chocolates, volunteering to teach Eth which men he should avoid. She warns against handsome but brainless men, with a chibi thought bubble noting Cassia's own weakness for them. She blushes as an arrow points out her soft spot for handsome men and her tendency to value looks over personality. She thinks angrily that while he's not wrong, it's infuriating to hear it said so bluntly. The image of an angry Leo flashes, and Cassia panics at the thought of him getting mad. Cassia, sweating nervously, tries to laugh it off, denying that she's simple-minded while angry. Leo looms behind her. Leo steps forward protectively, vowing he won't let any man, no matter who it is, get close to her. Eth looks up at Leo with an inquisitive "oh." Cassia glares at Leo, sarcastically asking if he's one of those men, too. When Leo remains silent, she becomes desperate, frantically reminding him that he's her bodyguard. Her panic escalates as she asks why he isn't defending himself. Against a floral background, a blushing and overwhelmed Leo can only stammer, "Huh?" Completely flustered and blushing at Leo's reaction, Cassia turns her head away. In a happy, chibi fantasy, a glasses-wearing Cassia enthusiastically feeds Leo a new dish at the table. The red-eyed mage smirks knowingly, while the maids watch the group with amusement. Leo assures Cassia not to worry, and she smiles back, saying she knows he isn't a shallow person. Struck by her words, a flustered Leo breaks out in a cold sweat. Morning sunlight streams through a window, marking the start of a new day. A voice urgently calls for Lady Cassia, startling her from her sleep. Cassia, in bed, is woken by a voice from outside her room, pleading for her to wake up. Cassia sits up blearily, recognizes the voice as her maid, Amy, and gives her permission to enter. Amy bursts in with an armful of letters, urgently asking Cassia to look. Cassia realizes with a joy jolt that these must be the letters Eve mentioned. Amy, flushed with excitement, presents the large stack of mail for Cassia's immediate review. Cassia stares at the pile of letters with a serious, determined expression. Amy reports that Mr. Royer is at Jerry's workshop checking on inventory. Hearing this, Cassia decides it's time for her to get to work too, much to Amy's curiosity. With a thoughtful look, Cassia reveals her destination, the mine. Leo stands alone, looking composed and handsome in a ruffled black shirt. Cassia nervously peeks out and asks if Leo would accompany her to the mine, surprising him. She flusteredly explains she was trying to be formal since he's the Emperor's son, which seems to take him by surprise. A gentle smile appears on Leo's face as he thinks he had a feeling she might start addressing him differently. He encourages her to be casual as usual, and a relieved Cassia asks if he's sure. In the hallway, Leo confirms he prefers it when she's casual and asks about the mine. She asks him to be her escort for the trip. The red-eyed mage appears, noting their busy morning, and Cassia explains she received letters about her new business. Cassia gasps in surprise as the mage calmly inspects a golden accessory. As Leo protectively steps in front of Cassia, the mage laughs, asking if she's overreacting to his sudden appearance. Cassia stares at him suspiciously, demanding to know why he appeared so unexpectedly. The mage winks playfully, explaining he was inspired by Etha's words. He reveals a glowing ring, announcing he's brought her a little gift. With a charming smile, he presents the ring, which glimmers with magical light. Cassia looks at the gift, wondering what it could be. The scene transitions, accompanied by a promotional bumper. A flashback shows Etha's warning to be careful of men, especially the flirtatious-looking mage. Remembering Etha's warning, Cassia stares at the smirking mage, who thinks she has no reason to be wary of him. Leo glares at the mage with a deeply menacing expression. As Leo sulks in the background, the mage casually tells Cassia to accept his gift. Cassia hesitates, wondering if she can really accept it, faced with such a precious item. The mage explained that the ring could be used to summon him in an emergency, which impressed Cassia, who made one last request. Cassia asked the mage to stop using honorifics with her. He grinned, proclaiming that although he was the master of the magic tower, he didn't want to be treated like an old man. After bidding them farewell, the mage Melvin left, and Cassia thanked him using his new and formal address. Cassia reflected in amazement on how friendly the two nobles, Leo and Melvin, were to her, finding it incredible. Cassia told Leo that it was reassuring to have the magical artifact for safety. Leo turned to her with an inquisitive gaze, asking if she trusted the ring more than him. She watched him walk away, wondering if her words had hurt his pride as a knight. In the clearing outside the carriage, Cassia quickly assured Leo that she trusted him more, calling him a reliable guard. Safely seated inside the moving carriage, Cassia dozed off peacefully by the sunlit window. As they traveled, Leo quietly commented that this was the first time they had ridden in a carriage together, and Cassia sleepily agreed. Eve's warning to be careful around men echoed in Cassia's mind. The narration mentioned that people like Cassia have no resistance to handsome men, as the screen showed Leo lost in thought. Sitting in the carriage, Cassia thought to herself that Leo's face was well-defined, like a sculpture. She continued to muse that his strong physique and charming smile could easily make any woman fall for him in an instant. Leo suddenly called Cassia's name, startling her out of her thoughts. He asked if there was something on her face. She flusteredly denied it, while he explained that he was just trying to commit her face to memory. In a Q-version thought bubble, Cassia rationalized that she was staring because his looks were objectively statue-like. Cassia smiled brightly and made a peace sign, seemingly satisfied with her own explanation. Her logic left Leo utterly confused, wondering if this was really a good idea. Cassia sighed, disappointed by his reaction. Leo suggested that if she was that desperate for a man, she should just tell him. This sent Cassia into a panic over the misunderstanding. As a chibi, Cassia stammered in shame, blurting out that she knew a thing or two about men's bodies. Leo calmly pointed out that not all men's bodies are the same. Leo's voice was heard from outside the carriage window, approving of her training her aesthetic eye by looking at his face. Cassia listened with an annoyed expression as he added that his previous offer was not a joke. Her face flushed with shock and embarrassment at his bold words. As Leo gazed thoughtfully into the distance, Cassia thought with frustration that she was still swayed by him. After the heart-fluttering conversation, Cassia coughed into her fist, trying to compose herself. Approaching the mine entrance, a voice noted their arrival and warned of unknown dangers within. Leo calmly affirmed that they would work hard today as well. Cassia and Leo walked down a path into the mine, which was filled with glowing blue crystals. Cassia smiled, certain that now that the crystals were found, the mine would surely return to its former vitality. An older man named Feed warmly greeted Lady Cassia, and she thanked him for his work. Cassia asked if the sudden increase in workload was difficult, but he assured her they had hired enough workers and everything was running smoothly. Feed handed her a document, submitting a progress report, which Cassia gratefully accepted, praising his excellent work. After confirming the report, Cassia requested a tour of the mine, and Feed readily agreed. A moment later, Cassia gasped, staring ahead in disbelief. She was stunned by a huge cavern filled with giant crystals shimmering with a brilliant blue light, and she wondered what had caused all this. She shook a dazed Feed, eagerly asking how the crystals had grown so large. Feed revealed that this amazing growth was all thanks to a boy named Dan. Cassia reacted in shock, repeating Dan's name in disbelief. A white-haired boy with elven ears peeked out from a corner, and Cassia wondered if this was the same Dan she once knew. Feed elaborated that although he didn't understand the principle, the crystals seemed to grow wherever Dan worked. Feed told Cassia he wanted to properly evaluate Dan's results and increase his wages, and she enthusiastically encouraged him to do so immediately. Cassia realized Dan must have an ability that promotes growth and fantasized about building him a private greenhouse to win his favor. The narration explained that Dan was a mix of dwarf, human, and elf, and had worked for her in a previous life. In a flashback, a young Dan stood in a sunny garden, reaching his hands toward the sky. Thanks to Dan's ability, Cassia had started a medicinal herb business in her past life and made him the greenhouse supervisor. Together, they successfully cultivated rare medicinal herbs and made a fortune. Immersed in memories and present success, Cassia walked with a bright, happy laugh. The scene transitioned, showing the exterior of her grand mansion. Returning home with Leo, Cassia announced their return to her assistant, Royer, who welcomed them. Royer stated he had a report to present, and she replied that the timing was perfect, as she also had a favor to ask. Cassia explained her plan to establish a trade guild. Royer agreed it was an excellent choice and confirmed that everyone was supportive, mentioning he had already filtered out forged documents from spies. Cassia was shocked that spies were already involved and asked how he knew, but Royer simply smiled and said it was a secret. Cassia looked at him in a fluster, imagining herself as a Q-version character demanding to know his confidential methods. She thought to herself that Royer was surprisingly competent, while he smiled confidently. Royer informed her that he had already selected several suitable candidates for the trade guild. They would be arriving soon. Satisfied with the progress, Cassia decided to review their resumes in preparation. The next day, a new day began at Cassia's sunny mansion. While conducting interviews, Cassia seemed to drift off, apologizing and explaining that she was lost in childhood memories. A voice explained that they had trouble keeping a job because their face reminded them of their late mother. A handsome applicant with pink hair vowed that if hired, he would be driven by his mother's memory to do his best. Cassia reflected in surprise, thinking that such an ideal candidate had appeared right from the start. As Cassia interviewed the pink-haired applicant, she angrily realized he was the man who had scammed her in her past life and vowed not to be fooled again. A young man with a sunny smile explained his mom told him it was time to get a job and was subsequently dismissed quickly. After dismissing a woman with too much perfume, Cassia also rejected a man who wanted a stable job to start a family. Leo menacingly approached the frightened applicant, questioning his desire to find a wife. The man collapsed to the floor, wailing at Lord Leo, while Cassia gasped in surprise behind her desk. The camera lingered on a scattered pile of resumes on the table. A frustrated Cassia slumped in her chair, wondering why there were no decent candidates. As she read a particular document, her expression suddenly became focused and surprised. Royer asked if she had found a good candidate, but a startled Cassia denied it. Cassia turned to her assistant, pointing at the resume and asking Royer why he had excluded this particular man from the list. When Royer asked if she liked him, Cassia clarified that while she didn't, his background made him the best candidate. Inwardly, she pondered Royer's reason for excluding Adolf. Cassia struggled to explain her reservations about the highly qualified Adolf, remembering that in her past life, he became a subordinate of a man named Douglas. She playfully imagined telling Royer she was from the future, then was deterred by the thought that he would quit because he thought she was crazy. Cassia decided she couldn't let Adolf near her, remembering he betrayed her for a title from Douglas. In a past life, Leo sat quietly in a chair, a contemplative expression on his face as he observed the situation. Cassia tapped the document, getting Royer's attention, preparing to explain her decision. Leo looked at the resume, pointing out that the reason for exclusion might not have been explained well enough. A nervous Cassia considered fabricating a story about a divine revelation to justify her choice. With a determined look, Cassia turned to Leo and simply said, "Good job." Leo looked back at her, revealing his own reason. Adolf was the person he hated the most. Cassia asked him why in surprise, and Leo mysteriously replied that it was just a gut feeling. Cassia understood his words, a knowing smile playing on her lips. Cassia cheerfully informed a dejected Royer that since Leo also agreed, the decision was final, which Royer could only accept with resignation. A thought bubble explained that it's natural to exclude candidates with personality clashes. Amy burst into the room in a panic, shouting for Lady Cassia and announcing that the man was here again. With a look of annoyance, Cassia reluctantly said she would be right there. Cassia threw open the office doors, angrily wondering what this uninvited guest wanted. A blond man in a white uniform sat casually in her chair, smirking and commenting on her foul mood. The blond man stood up and walked toward her, beginning to comment on her recent behavior. He leaned in close, whispering that she now dared to fight him back. Cassia slapped his hand away, ordering him to leave immediately or she would throw him out. As the man asked if she had forgotten who he was, Leo appeared behind him like a shadow, questioning how he dared to so casually touch the son of Duke Val. With a grim aura, Leo grabbed the blond man by the collar, lifted him off the ground, and coldly ordered him to get out. The blond man was thrown out of the mansion in a comical Q-version form. The next day, an angry Cassia returned home and was greeted warmly by Royer, and with a concerned inquiry from Amy. A flashback showed the handsome blond man being comically thrown out, accompanied by the echo of Get Out. Standing outside, Cassia angrily complained about the trashy visitor while Leo looked on. Cassia firmly instructed Royer to file a restraining order, and he calmly agreed to her request. She then asked Royer to contact Melvin and ask him to visit, her expression serious. Later, in a dimly lit room, Melvin asked Cassia if she was really from the future. When Cassia asked if he was surprised, Melvin calmly stated that as a mage, he wasn't, and noted that she was keeping his secret by dismissing her servants. Melvin accurately guessed that she was confiding in him because the present had now changed significantly compared to the past she knew. Cassia clenched her fists, confirming he was exactly right. She revealed that her ex-husband had never pestered her in her past life, and now she was afraid that the changes she made to the timeline would cause harm to the people she loved. Looking at Melvin, she confessed that the thought of her loved ones getting hurt by something unexpected terrified her. Melvin asked why she had forgotten him in the first place, and she explained that she was too busy after the divorce to spare a thought for anything else. Melvin speculated that Douglas had likely been lurking around her in the past as well, which shocked Cassia. He elaborated that Douglas was probably plotting around her in a very cunning way. Melvin explained Douglas's insidious plan to emotionally exhaust her, make her forget his actions, and then manipulate her into opening up to him again. The horrifying vision concluded with Douglas smugly embracing a heartbroken and defeated Cassia from the past life. Still reeling from Melvin's speculation, Cassia thought in disbelief that it couldn't possibly be true. She stood alone among a bush of white roses, looking lonely and melancholic. Melvin's voice speculated that because she had loyal employees, Douglas probably felt he had no opening. Melvin continued, pointing out that even now, she was distracted and still concerned about Douglas. Her expression hardened with anger as she thought of that trash, gritting her teeth. In a flashback, a young Melvin warned a young Cassia to be careful, as Douglas would continue to harass her. Melvin added that Douglas had probably already made his move, which brought a worried expression to Cassia's face. Back in the present, Melvin announced he had an urgent report for her, and she asked what it was. He gravely informed, that counterfeit crystals were reportedly on the market. Cassia, Melvin, and Royer stared with serious expressions as Cassia began to process the news. With a thud, a box opened to reveal a poorly made crystal, and Royer commented on its shoddy craftsmanship. Holding the fake, Royer explained that while it mimicked the shape, it lacked the luster and brightness of a real crystal. Royer reported that these counterfeits, sold at half price, had caused a 10 drop in sales. Cassia demanded to know where they were being sold. Royer confirmed the sellers were Viscount Vandal's group of shady merchant guilds, prompting a Q-version Cassia to furiously denounce the shameless imitation. An assistant with yellow eyes and black hair asked in shock what Cassia was talking about. The worried assistant feared they would suffer losses if the issue was ignored, but Cassia assured him she would handle it. When the assistant asked about her plan, Cassia turned to Royer, asking him to check if a certain application had been approved. Sitting amidst piles of coins, Cassia sinisterly revealed her plan. Wait for their sales to drop further, then sue for massive damages. Her expression turned serious as a new thought occurred to her. She wondered aloud why Douglas hadn't personally handled the counterfeit issue, with Royer confirming it would have been a piece of cake for the Falth Ducal Guild. Cassia dismissed the thought, assuming Douglas was too embarrassed to get involved because the fakes were so obviously poor. With a sharp and knowing smile, Cassia told Royer he knew what to do, and Royer accepted the fact that he would be working overtime. Cassia insisted on joining him, and the scene switched to their residence at night. Cassia and Royer worked diligently in the moonlit office. Surrounded by piles of documents, Royer nervously asked if their plan to sue for full damages would make them look like villains, and Cassia wryly agreed that they had been played. He elaborated that the Duke Falth family didn't seem to be involved, so they likely wouldn't face any consequences for the scheme. Recalling Douglas's smug face, Cassia's hand tightened on a document as she thought what a scoundrel he was. The maid Amy quietly entered the room to announce that Lady Cassia had a visitor. With a click, Cassia opened the office door to see who it was. She was surprised to see a nervous young woman with golden braids, whom she recognized as Vandal. The teary-eyed young woman, Vandal, began to stammer out the reason for her visit. Looking at Cassia, Vandal explained that she wanted to express her gratitude. She tearfully recounted her painful past, where she had an abusive father who hurt her, and her mother every day. Vandal admitted with a pained expression that even with her father gone, his actions still weighed heavily on her. She revealed that watching the trial between her father and the merchant group made her realize her own responsibility. Vandal looked at Cassia with determination, declaring that she must face the mistakes her father made. She held out 2 envelopes containing all their assets, cash, the merchant group, and the deeds to their properties, as a form of compensation. Vandal told Cassia that she and her mother wanted to take back control of their lives from now on. Vandal admitted the assets weren't enough and promised to repay the rest monthly, but a surprised Cassia urged her to wait. Cassia asked how she and her mother planned to live, but Vandal had no plan yet, only asking for leniency. In a Q-version flashback, Cassia quickly clarified that her question wasn't meant to pressure her for money. Vandal looked up, her eyes filled with hopeful and grateful tears. The scene transitioned, showing the roof of a grand building, under a clear blue sky. The narration explained that this incident provided the perfect opportunity for Cassia Victor to prove she could thrive after her divorce. Cassia reflected with a confident smirk that while Viscount Vandal's death caused some talk, it was only the opinion of a minority. The narration boasted that her crystals and Dan's herbs were selling like hotcakes, and a Q-version Cassia celebrated Dan as their lucky charm. As Vandal fumbled with a tray, Cassia thought to herself that the child could be quite clumsy at times. Cassia smiled warmly, concluding that Vandal was a kind, innocent, and hard-working child. Taking a sip of tea, Cassia asked if this was one of the new imported varieties she had arranged. Vandal smiled proudly, confirming it was tea from the Persia region, known for its deep, roasted aroma. The girl with the golden braids, Vandal, explained that this new tea was versatile, enjoyable both hot and cold. Cassia took a sip and agreed it was delicious, much to Vandal's delight. Royer took a sip and asked Vandal how she had discovered this unique tea, curious if she had always been interested in it. She recounted a painful memory of nearly being hit by a carriage while fleeing her father but a kind person took her in. Under that person's care, she learned about the tea from the Persia region and its calming effects. A curious Q-version Cassia asked if it could be sold as a product, and a hopeful Q-version Vandal confirmed it could. However, Vandal warned of an addiction risk, but believed it would be a great product if handled with care. Holding an ornate bottle, Cassia considered the tea's potential, thinking it could be a huge hit if the side effects could be controlled. A voice from behind her suddenly asked about the side effects, startling Cassia. She turned to see the white-haired elf, Dan, realizing they could consult him. Cassia explained they were discussing importing the tea, mentioning its excellent taste, calming effects, and potential side effects. Dan was surprised to learn she was considering selling it, and noted it was from the Persia region. He gravely corrected her, revealing that the leaves were not for tea, but were actually used as a hallucinogen. Dan explained that a plant spirit called intent parasitizes the tea plant, giving the leaves their hallucinogenic properties. This shocking revelation left both Cassia and Royer speechless. In the shadows, a horrified Vandal clutched her throat. She stammered in a panic that she didn't know its true nature and just wanted to be helpful. Cassia kindly comforted the distraught Vandal, saying that everyone makes mistakes and they would look for other products. Royer announced it was time for Lady Cassia to leave, and she realized how late it had gotten. A worried Vandal asked where she was going, and Cassia replied that there was an auction today. Standing before a map, Cassia revealed that at this auction, the land of Walbiter would be sold. She thought to herself that it was thanks to that child for providing such valuable information. Suddenly, Vandal grabbed Cassia's hand with a determined look. She looked up earnestly, pleading with Cassia to take her along this time. A surprised Cassia asked, "You're going too?" While Vandal insisted she would be useful. Seeing how worried she was, Cassia decided to give her a chance to atone and agreed, calling her Isaac. An overjoyed Isaac asked if she was serious. Cassia paused for a moment as a thought flashed through her mind. She shook it off and smiled, saying it was time to go or they would be late for the auction. The scene switched to a grand auction house under a clear blue sky. Upon arriving, Cassia's face twisted into an expression of pure disgust. A smiling blond man approached, holding a large bouquet of red roses. Standing at the top of the stairs, Cassia realized she had run into him and was utterly fed up. After taking her seat, she crossed her arms and glared, thinking with contempt of her ex-husband's name, Douglas. She fumed silently, wondering why he was getting pettier by the day, while he smiled with a smug expression. The auctioneer took the stage, explaining they would use sealed bids to prevent excessive bidding. Douglas and Cassia exchanged a tense and knowing look across the room. The auction began, with the land of Walbutrin being described as a barren and currently unprofitable piece of land. Douglas yawned, feigning boredom and disinterest. Thump! In her mind, Cassia, wearing cool sunglasses, thought to herself that she knew exactly what would soon happen to Walbutron. A close-up showed her earring, which was Melvin's magical communication device, usable for half a time per day. Cassia observed Douglas from her seat, noticing he hadn't written down his bid yet. She planned to let him win the other items first, letting him gloat over her foolishly losing money. Isaac watched intently as Cassia began to write her bid on the card. A shocked Isaac saw Cassia bid a whopping 560 gold and whispered in amazement that it was incredible. Full of admiration, Isaac clenched her fists in firm support of her. Douglas glanced over with a smug smile, catching the attention of an annoyed Q-version Cassia. Her inner voice was calm, stating that she already knew how he would play this. Cassia leaned back in her chair with a serene and confident expression, a look of determination in her eyes, thinking that she just had to bid higher than Douglas. The pink-haired auctioneer examined the submitted bid cards with a calm expression. Her eyes widened in shock, wondering what she had just read. A re-auction was announced to the hall. Douglas explained that both bids were an identical 560 gold and 1 silver, causing Cassia to show visible frustration. Cassia blamed herself internally, wishing she had bid 2 silver. TSK. Realizing Douglas was trying to mock her by winning by the smallest margin, an angry Cassia was shocked that he had also bid 1 silver, but as Isaac cheered for her, she reaffirmed her superior experience. The auctioneer sighed, thinking that if she didn't know their past, she would draw a completely different conclusion about their relationship upon seeing the bids match again. Even the auctioneer was getting suspicious, while Q versions of Cassia and Douglas expressed their mutual disgust. A worried Cassia thought this wasn't good, noting that it was rare for bidding. to go on for this long. The tension escalated as bidding opportunities became limited. The rules were explained. If 3 identical bids were submitted, the auction would be voided, which would attract more bidders. Cassia let out a defiant cry in her mind, shattering the illusion, determined to prevent the auction from being voided. She decided she had to win while butchering today, knowing the price would skyrocket if the auction was postponed. Cassia realized Douglas must be counting on that outcome and suddenly wondered how he could match her bids so perfectly. In plain sight, she thought, once is a coincidence, twice is a pattern. Cassia immediately ruled out Royer as a spy, certain he had no reason to side with Douglas. She also ruled out Melvin, recalling his open hostility toward her ex-husband, which left only one possibility. As Isaac called her name, Isaac gave a bright and encouraging smile, assuring Cassia that she would definitely win the next round. Isaac cheered enthusiastically, urging her to go for it, which drew a slightly flustered response from Cassia. Douglas smirked, thinking Cassia could never win against him, holding a bid of 600 gold and 1 silver. He thought with a possessive smile that she should stay by his side and look only at him. Under immense pressure, Cassia clutched her bid card, desperately trying to come up with an amount that would guarantee victory over Douglas. Her determined gaze met a hand gesture showing the number 2. Understanding Melvin's signal to add 20 gold, Cassia abandoned small increments and decided to go for a decisive win. A confident and knowing smile bloomed on Cassia's face. Melvin returned her confidence with a slight smile of his own. Watching the auctioneer, Cassia realized that staring at Douglas had dangerously narrowed her vision. With renewed clarity, she recalled the moments she had fought alongside Melvin. The scene flashed, focusing on a gilded pillar in the silent auction hall. The auctioneer stood before the expectant crowd, ready to announce the final winning bid. The Eurasia Merchant Guild was declared the winner with a bid of 620 gold, sending Cassia and Royer into a frenzy of celebration. Surrounded by her celebrating team, Cassia announced she would pay by check immediately, and the auctioneer agreed to complete the paperwork. Cassia sighed in relief, thankful that Douglas was too focused on winning by 1 gold. Just as she was thinking about developing wall buttering, Melvin suddenly pulled her back, startling her. An enraged Douglas confronted them, and Melvin stepped protectively in front, warning him not to touch Cassia. A devastated Douglas realized he should have seen this coming, while Cassia coolly told him to just admit he lost. As a frustrated Douglas stood alone in the empty hall, Cassia's voice questioned his audacity. Safely under Melvin's protection, Cassia watched as he fiercely berated Douglas for his behavior. An enraged Douglas charged toward them, demanding to know how they pulled off such a trick. Cassia calmly asked him what his problem was, taunting him about whether he couldn't comprehend how she had outbid him. She continued her verbal assault, mockingly asking if he was surprised by her current attitude. As she turned to leave with Melvin, Cassia coldly informed Douglas that he was no longer important to her, and that he needed to leave his fantasy world. She delivered a final blow, declaring that he had lost the mind game to her. This completely broke him. The next day, a golden rain revealed Walbutron's rich gold veins, making it the Eurasia Commerce Guild's newest asset. Cassia appeared in a successful advertising campaign for the guild's new products, which included durable meteor swords and a battery with infinite magic power, the Meteor Core. Melvin gazed at a newly forged golden sword. He gripped the hilt of the meteor sword tightly, its golden glow contrasting with the surrounding white flowers. Mages flocked to purchase the meteor cores, and surprisingly, Melvin was the first to seek this powerful artifact from Cassia. As her white hair fluttered, a narration confirmed that the golden age of Cassia Victor had finally begun. Cassia revealed a triumphant smile by an open window, declaring it a beautiful day as her newfound prosperity spread throughout the empire. Inside a lavishly decorated hall, party poppers exploded, celebrating Lady Cassia's success. Amidst the confetti, a smiling Cassia graciously thanked everyone for their full support. Looking at her loyal employees, she gratefully acknowledged that she couldn't have succeeded without them. Wow! An enthusiastic Cassia picked up a bottle of wine, encouraging everyone to party and celebrate their victory. Her celebration was interrupted by a voice calling her name as footsteps gradually approached. The visitor was revealed to be a smiling Isaac, and he looked genuinely happy for Cassia's success. As a sudden realization realization dawned. Cassia's celebratory mood instantly vanished. She connected the dots, concluding that Isaac and Douglas were secretly cooperating, using repeated phrases at the auction as signals. A wave of pity washed over Cassia as she considered a cruel possibility. Douglas was merely using Isaac. Cassia clenched her hands. Cassia struggled with how to handle this delicate and potentially heartbreaking situation. Snapping back to reality, Cassia faced a worried-looking Isaac, who said they had been calling her name. Cassia felt frustrated internally, thinking that although Isaac was clumsy, she had to admit she was cute. As Cassia and Isaac looked at each other, a black-haired man named Leo stood between them, and the scene fell into a tense silence. As the three of them faced off in a chibi style, a silent tension filled the air. Leo gave him a serious and firm glare. Isaac winked playfully, her inner thoughts expressing confusion about the strange situation. In another thought, Royer was angry at Douglas and Isaac, wondering why they couldn't just leave Cassia alone. A flashback of a younger Cassia and Leo standing back-to-back illustrated their long and complicated history. Leo turned and walked away, disgusted by what he perceived as their shameless behavior. Cassia grabbed Leo's arm, her expression turning determined as she began to execute a plan. Off-screen, Isaac announced that their chef, Linda, had prepared special celebratory steaks. Cassia chimed in with a bright smile, seeming delighted by the news. Leo gave a slight smirk, agreeing to her unspoken plan. Cassia thought to herself that she was only pretending to be close, holding his hand as part of an act. Under the watchful eyes of the staff, Cassia led Leo away from the party to set her plan in motion. The scene changed to a magnificent, sparkling white palace, where Cassia stood at the entrance, questioning why she was there. Seeing Leo in the garden, she again wondered why she was at the Imperial Palace. Cassia laughingly asked Leo why he was following her, and he calmly replied that he was her bodyguard. She argued, somewhat flustered, that since they had arrived at the Imperial Palace, it was inappropriate for him to keep following her. She recalled a recent ambush and abruptly realized that the assassin's target had been Leo, not her. Leo's expression was serious and unreadable. A close-up shot highlighted his formal and ornate blue jacket, befitting a royal guard. Cassia voiced her concerns aloud, asking what would happen if he were killed in the Empress's palace, and whether that would be embarrassing for him. As Leo looked at the very worried Cassia, a slight smile touched his lips. He gently took her hand, pulling her closer. Cassia blushed furiously, exclaiming that what he said was too strange, while an oblivious Isaac watched from a distance. When a maid called for them, an embarrassed Cassia quickly agreed to go over and told Leo to cover his face. The scene shifted to a grand room with gold-paneled walls and ornate candelabras. Cassia curtsied gracefully, formally introducing herself before the Empress. The Empress, a blonde woman with a prominent scar on her cheek, stated that she had only invited Cassia. Cassia apologized and explained that due to the recent danger she had faced, she had no choice but to bring her bodyguard. As the Empress's eyes flashed a threatening red, a nervous chibi, Cassia worried that explaining Leo wasn't there as a prince had failed to de-escalate the situation. The Empress sighed, reluctantly accepting their presence. Over tea, the Empress acknowledged that Cassia Victor's formidable reputation was well known even within the palace walls. The Empress praised Cassia as a role model for finding her own path, but Cassia remained wary, sensing an ulterior motive. The Empress took a sip of tea, expressing her support for Cassia. She then made it clear that she wanted to help Cassia completely escape the shadow of Duke Falf. This made Cassia tense. Cassia correctly deduced that the Empress had her own agenda, which the Empress confirmed by praising her sharpness. The Empress set down her teacup, preparing to state her terms. The Empress looked directly at Cassia and made her demand, a promise that her bodyguard, Leo, would remain in his position permanently. The blonde woman demanded that Cassia promise her bodyguard would remain permanently. She offered a deal. If Cassia agreed, she would keep Duke Falf away, leaving Cassia to ponder this ultimatum. The blonde woman smiled, adding that she liked Cassia's way of life and might be able to offer her more help. However, she clarified that her offer was only valid if Leo did not return to the royal family. Cassia smiled politely and refused the offer, stating she had no right to control Leo's life. Cassia's gaze sharpened, her eyes sharp and determined. This showed she would not be manipulated. To her surprise, Leo bowed and agreed to follow Her Majesty the Empress's instructions. Cassia shouted his name in shock, while the blonde woman questioned whether his sudden compliance could be trusted. Leo confirmed his words with a deep, somber gaze, but left it to Her Majesty the Empress to decide whether to believe him. A frantic chibi Cassia yelled his name, completely baffled by his sudden decision. Cassia apologized and asked for time to think, but Leo interjected, declaring his decision was final. The blonde woman accepted his answer, telling Cassia to take her time and reflect on the situation. As they left, Cassia was inwardly shocked, not expecting the Empress to make such a direct proposal. Sitting in the carriage, Cassia thought that perhaps distancing herself from Leo was the best option. She addressed him as Your Highness, but Leo was confused, prompting her to explain her reason for hiring him. Cassia stated she had hired him as a bodyguard in the hope that it would bring him some peace of mind. A brief, happy flashback showed a young Leo smiling at a man with dark blue hair. Cassia told him that a good future requires enduring the present, even if those choices are not one's own. A flustered Leo changed his address for her from Cassia to Lady, pleading with her not to call him by his title. He clenched his fists tightly, explaining that she had to understand what returning to the palace meant for him. He lamented that his royal dragon blood was not his choice, yet to survive, he was forced to endure a life he did not want. Leo passionately declared that the only path he had ever willingly chosen was the one where he decided to protect her. Cassia sat in silence, deeply moved by his heartfelt confession. A startled chibi, Cassia quickly backpedaled, claiming she was just speaking hypothetically and agreeing that he shouldn't accept the Empress's offer. Cassia tried to calm herself down, reasoning that Leo simply preferred his current life, and that was all. With a determined expression, Leo promised that he would be more mindful of his actions from now on. The camera focused on the ornate details of his formal blue and gold jacket. Then, Leo declared his intention to serve as her bodyguard for the rest of his life, leaving Cassia stunned. The words "rest of his life" echoed like a shadow, and Cassia stared at him with wide, horrified eyes. Back at the manor, she finally snapped out of her shock and demanded to know what he meant by that declaration. In her office, Royer asked if she had fought with Leo, and Cassia painfully admitted that it seemed that way. She denied that anything was wrong, but Royer pointed out that they had been acting distant lately. Cassia reflected on how Leo's demeanor had shifted since their conversation in the carriage. She remembered how he used to stay close by her side while she worked. Now, however, he only guarded from a distance, dutifully following whenever she left. She felt as if a friendly cat had suddenly turned cold, making her unable to bring herself to ask him for help. Royer nervously asked if he could get a bodyguard for himself too, citing the increasing threats to their ever-expanding company. He admitted he had hoped Leo's presence would protect him as well, but now he wasn't so sure. Cassia reassured him that she would hire additional guards. Just as Cassia opened her office door, she found Leo standing there in a form-fitting black training outfit. A sudden and intense vision of flames overwhelmed her. Snapping back to her senses, Cassia realized the danger was real and screamed for everyone to get back. The manor's main gate was engulfed in flames, and she frantically ordered someone to put out the fire. Her heart sank with fear when she realized the fire was consuming the greenhouse where Dan was resting. As she started to run towards the blaze, Leo grabbed her arm. He demanded to know where she was going. But Dan is still. She began to explain, but Leo's stern and resolute expression silenced her. A painful memory of a past tragedy flashed in her mind, and she swore she would never let Dan die in this life. Leo stood firm against the backdrop of the fire, his gaze hardening with resolve. He ordered Royer to take Lady Keisha and leave the area immediately. As Royer pulled her away, a stunned Cassia asked what Leo intended to do, only to see him summon a massive pillar of water magic. Cassia watched as this immense power was unleashed, her face a mask of pure shock and disbelief. In a flashback to a fire, a figure called out to Leo as he rushed toward a burning building. Royer held back a frantic Cassia, insisting they had to escape and leave the person in the fire to Leo. A bead of sweat rolled down Cassia's cheek as she inwardly questioned if it was right to be worrying about others right now. A blonde woman in a green dress appeared, chiding Cassia for worrying about Leo instead of her own safety. Cassia glared, her expression hardening with anger and determination. The woman with the blonde braids was revealed to be Isaac, who smiled, flanked by two men. Isaac let out a bright, cheerful laugh, looking happy with her eyes closed. Cassia struggled in Royer's arms, shouting Isaac's name in disbelief. As Royer begged her to calm down, he revealed his true stance, asking Cassia if she really believed he was just a subordinate used by Lord Douglas. As a dark aura emanated, Isaac revealed a sinister smile, her face shrouded in shadow as her true intentions became clear. Royer spoke to Cassia, who looked at him with a complex expression of shock and betrayal. Isaac leaned close to Cassia, tauntingly commenting that even after being betrayed, she still trusted others so easily. Isaac placed a glowing hand on her chest, announcing she had been instructed to deliver a message. Accompanied by a vision of a smirking blonde man, Isaac told Cassia this was her last chance. As Cassia watched in horror, the blonde man offered to forgive her if she returned, and the vision showed Royer being violently struck down. The blonde man's sinister voice threatened that Cassia would lose Royer, declaring her true place was by his side as the vision showed him controlling her. The scene cut to a raging fire consuming a forest. Leo emerged from the inferno, carrying an unconscious white-haired man on his back. The man thanked him, and Leo called him incredible. The red-haired man explained that he was so focused on studying Cassia's new products that he didn't notice the fire. A chibi Leo yelled at him to run. With soot on his face, Leo's thoughts turned to Cassia, his expression filled with worry. He carried the rescued man through the burning woods, determined to get him to safety. Leo told the man he needed to find Cassia and asked if he could make it to safety on his own from here. After setting the man down, Leo prepared to leave. The man asked if he knew where Cassia was. Hearing her name, Leo turned with a sense of urgency, his mind only on Keisha when someone called out to him. He sprinted back toward the fire, desperately hoping she was safe. Standing before the burning manor, Leo stopped abruptly, shocked by what he heard. An enraged Cassia clenched her fists, furiously rejecting the idea that she should be with Douglas. She swore she would never return to Douglas, declaring her intention to stay with Leo and the others. As she was seen dodging Isaac, a panting Cassia showed her resolve with a determined look in her eyes, making her stance clear. In a gentle, floral fantasy sequence, Leo sweetly embraced Cassia, promising he would stay by her side. Leo's sudden appearance left Cassia speechless as he looked at her with a gentle, reassuring smile. Cassia leaned against Leo's chest, her voice trembling as she asked about Royer. Looking at the unconscious and bleeding Royer, Leo reassured her not to worry anymore. Leo's hand tightened on his sword hilt, ready for battle. He charged forward. His sword flared with fiery energy as he attacked. Isaac sneered mockingly that even a skilled warrior like Leo couldn't win in such a disadvantageous situation as her allies closed in. Isaac's eyes gleamed with malicious confidence, a bead of sweat running down her temple. Leo blocked a strike from one attacker while another closed in from behind. Cassia watched in terror, realizing Leo was outnumbered and that Isaac could use her artifact to summon more help. A memory of Isaac holding a glowing ring flashed through her mind. Cassia remembered being told to shout a name into the ring in a time of crisis. She brought the ring to her lips and desperately whispered a call for help. "Melvin," Kesha shouted, releasing a stream of purple energy from the powerful ring on her finger. A cloaked, black-haired man appeared in a magic circle, saying she had called too late but was safe now. As the newly arrived Melvin held her, Kesha looked past him at another figure, demanding to know who he was. Melvin watched with sharp red eyes, his expression serious and unreadable. Isaac cried out internally, shocked at how quickly the mage had appeared and realizing her plan was in jeopardy. Cassia stood alone, looking vulnerable in a swirling vortex of fiery chaos. Her eyes were wide with terror, a bead of sweat trickling down her cheek. With a determined cry, Isaac drew her sword and charged at Cassia, declaring that if she couldn't take her, she would have to act. Leo screamed Cassia's name, lunging forward to protect her from an unseen threat. An enraged Isaac drew her sword, vowing to kill Lady Cassia. Melvin unleashed a shockwave of purple magic, knocking Leo back with immense force. A sword pierced a victim's chest. The blood-soaked tip of a sword emerged above an ornate rug. Cassia looked up in horror to see a man with platinum blonde hair collapsing, having taken the blow for her. Her eyes widened in shock and disbelief, staring at her fallen protector. The wounded man looked down as blood dripped from the corner of his mouth, and Cassia whispered his name. "Done?" Cassia cried out in anguish, desperately holding Dan as he collapsed into her arms. Leo stood guard nearby, wondering grimly if the attacker, Isaac, had managed to escape. A frantic Cassia held the dying Dan, begging him not to die, unable to bear the pain of losing him again. Leo cautiously approached the grief-stricken Cassia as she cradled the heavily wounded Dan. A gentle hand landed on her shoulder, and a calm voice assured her it wasn't too late. The scene shifted to Cassia's bedroom, where she sat alone on her bed, bathed in a soft, ethereal light. She jumped when the door opened, and Leo asked if she had been calling for him. Cassia recognized him, her expression softening as she said his name. She asked worriedly if Dan would be all right, and Leo gently reassured her. Leo explained that thanks to Melvin's healing magic, Dan was sleeping soundly, which prompted Cassia to ask where Melvin was. A chibi Leo reported that Melvin was repairing the greenhouse and strengthening the manor's defensive magic. A blushing chibi Cassia listened to his report, then hesitated, wanting to ask him something else. She asked what he was doing, and Leo explained that his men were searching the room for listening devices. He reported that the room seemed secure for now, but Cassia was clearly still uneasy. A small and confused Cassia wondered about Leo's sudden, intense demeanor as he watched her seriously. Leo called her name, his intense gaze making her blush as he moved closer. He told her she would get sick if she stayed wet, but a nervous Cassia, wrapped in a fluffy robe, told him she was fine and asked him to leave. Leo flatly refused, announcing his intention to stay with her. The camera focused on her bed as he explained. Although the threat from Isaac was gone for now, they couldn't predict what would happen next. Cassia argued that Melvin's magical protection should be enough and that she was going to hire new bodyguards anyway. Leo cut her off, revealing he had already hired people, then playfully put her in a headlock as she thought about how persistent he was. Cassia lay sleepless in bed, her eyes vacant, her mind still replaying the day's events. Cassia admitted with tears in her eyes that him staring at the wall was making her more anxious. Hearing this, Leo stood up from his chair with purpose. He sat on the edge of her bed, promising to stay and talk with her until she fell asleep. Leo's gentle and reassuring smile left Cassia momentarily speechless. Flustered but grateful, Cassia quietly accepted his kindness. Leo sensed she had something on her mind, but she quickly denied having anything important to say. In her thoughts, Keisha realized she had never formally apologized to him for what happened at the palace. He began to apologize for his own behavior at the palace, explaining he was just worried she would regret returning to that life. He reiterated that he didn't want her to have regrets, and Cassia accepted his apology, telling him she understood. He added that the warmth she gave him, a flashback showed a young Leo embracing a sad, blonde Cassia and placing a comforting kiss on her forehead, was something he never wanted to let go of. He finished with a blush and a gentle smile, softly tucking her in. Leo thought to himself that she was the only one he wanted to protect and be with. As he watched over her sleeping form, a new day dawned, with bright sunlight shining on a stately brick house. A chibi Cassia asked a serious man with a scarred face and two-toned hair if these people were his friends from the academy. A silver-haired youth smiled confidently as a chibi Leo confirmed it, pointing to the person next to Cassia. Cassia laughed with a red-haired woman, who looked at her with an annoyed expression, questioning her tone. The red-haired woman clung to Cassia, complimenting her smooth skin and refusing to let go despite Cassia's pleas. The woman dragged Cassia toward a man with his back to them, demanding to know why she was summoned and criticizing his lack of an introduction. In a speech bubble, a woman introduced herself as Jasmine, someone who loves to groom beautiful people. The charming Jasmine suggested a game of poker, but the word gambling made Cassia nervous. Jasmine introduced the scarred, silver-haired man as Musk, their wallet, though Cassia found him terrifying. When Jasmine explained that Musk had made his fortune from a huge scam, a horrified Cassia realized he was a criminal. Cassia sighed and asked Leo about his criteria for choosing bodyguards, and he revealed their plan was to set a trap for Duke Falf. A happy chibi Cassia realized they had brought in a con artist to assist with their plan. A chibi Leo announced that the last person should be arriving soon, as the back of a green-haired figure on a boat came into view. Leo said the newcomer would strengthen their security, at which point Isaac introduced himself. He admitted to feeling a bit sentimental about returning. A curious chibi Cassia asked if he had been here before, and Isaac happily confirmed that this was once his home. As Cassia realized the truth, Isaac laughed. Noticing her expression showed she had already guessed. Isaac confirmed he was the sole survivor of the murder that took place in this house, 3 Central Avenue. Everyone gathered in Cassia's office to discuss the incident at 3 Central Avenue. Cassia noted with suspicion that Isaac seemed to know a lot about the incident. Isaac confirmed with a calm smile that he was the sole survivor of that tragic event. Cassia thought to herself that while she knew there was a survivor when she bought the house, she never imagined it would be a friend of Leo's. While Keisha was still in shock, Isaac clarified that his past was not the reason for his return. Jasmine announced that everyone, including Musk and Isaac, had gathered to support Lady Keisha's cause. Jasmine added that she was also eager to meet the person Leo was always talking about, which flustered Keisha. Just as Jasmine started to reveal details, Leo clapped a hand over her mouth, desperately telling her to stop. Leo angrily pushed Jasmine, Isaac, and Musk out of the room, shouting that he would explain later. Cassia confronted the sweating, panicked Leo, demanding to know what he had been telling his friends about her. Leo looked at her with a serious, unblinking gaze. Cassia pressed him for an answer, wanting to know what his mysterious stories could possibly mean. She warned him with a stern look that what he told them had better not be anything strange. As new allies joined their cause, the manor became a hub of activity. Jasmine and Musk set off immediately to prepare a trap for Douglas. Royer was shocked but grateful to see Isaac helping him with a large pile of paperwork. Amidst a flurry of activity, Royer informed Cassia that their morning plan was to bid on the Alba ebony logs. He continued that after the auction, they would visit Jerry's workshop. Cassia had a feeling the auction would be intense and pointed out a man to Royer, certain he would cause trouble. Royer looked over, his expression filled with concern. A smirking, black-haired man with glasses stood confidently beside a blonde companion. Realizing Douglas had allied with Adolf, Cassia clenched her fist while Royer asked if they should give up. With renewed determination, Cassia announced a change of plans, ordering Royer to attend the auction himself. At a busy port, Cassia declared she would personally go to buy the next item on their list. Leo questioned the wisdom of leaving Royer alone, but Cassia confidently assured him of Royer's capabilities. Despite her calm exterior, Cassia was worried for Royer, but she knew she had to seize the opportunity while Douglas was distracted. When a chibi Leo asked about their plan, Cassia explained her intention to meet with an Easter trade guild. A narration explained the growing popularity of Eastern trade, particularly the demand from nobles for unique silk garments. Cassia fondly recalled her late father's passion for imported silk, remembering him once showing her a beautiful fabric. In the memory, a young Cassia marveled at the fabric's beauty, and her father promised to make many dresses for her. Her father's joyful expression showed how happy her excitement made him. Back in the present, Cassia saw the arrival of a large trade guild as a perfect opportunity to establish a connection with them. Leo mysteriously hinted that if it was that group, their conversation might go very smoothly, which confused Cassia. As they waited in a quiet alley, Leo began to explain. A cheerful person with long green hair ran toward them with a bright smile. Cassia was clearly surprised by the stranger's sudden appearance. The green-haired person was beaming with joy as they approached. The newcomer greeted Leo enthusiastically, and Leo apologized to Cassia for his friend's forwardness, recognizing them as being from the Ray Empire. The newcomer stepped forward, preparing for a formal introduction. The green-haired person bowed politely, introducing himself as Shin, a friend of Leo's from the Ray Empire. Cassia realized the head of the trade guild was Leo's friend, and while this should have been a stroke of luck, she felt an inexplicable tightness in her chest. With a bright smile, she formally introduced herself to the green-haired woman as Cassia Victor from the Erasio Commerce Guild. The green-haired woman stared at her so intently that Cassia nervously wondered why. Leo lightly tapped the green-haired woman on the head, telling his friend, Shin, to show respect to Cassia, as she was the master he had chosen. Shin questioned why Leo was so infatuated with someone she considered so mediocre. She added that after hearing Leo drone on about how irreplaceable Cassia was, she didn't think she was anything special, which flustered Leo. Someone apologized for Shin's behavior, but Cassia brushed it off, commenting that the people of the Rey Empire must be easygoing. Cassia chuckled lightly, trying to diffuse the tension left by the awkward encounter. Cassia suggested they have a formal meeting another day and looked at Leo. Leo asked if she was sure, but Cassia cheerfully insisted, telling Leo to take the day off and catch up with his friends, much to his surprise. As she walked away, Cassia felt troubled, wondering why seeing Leo with his friends suddenly made him feel like a stranger. Her heart grew heavy as she realized she knew very little about him beyond his duties. The sound of pattering footsteps made her stop, and a voice called out, asking where she was going. A memory of a blonde man finding her came to mind, and she recalled how Leo was always there for her whenever she was in trouble.